Good morning, namaste, Andrew Day.
Namaste. Great to be with you.
Yeah, Sanjay Onuza.
Tikasu, Ramrosa. Very Texas Ramrosa this morning. Right.
Yeah, finally we made this happen. We're in Texas. And let me ask you a very important question. Does your body know what time zone it's in right now?
Yeah, I think, look, we're into week 4 of Major League, maybe even week 5 now, actually. And it's been an incredible 5 weeks. What a tournament, what a competition. They've kind of gone with the traveling roadshow approach this year. So we started out in Oakland, came across here to Texas for a couple of weeks. We're just down in Florida, got back from Florida yesterday. And now it's right on the brink. We're recording this on the brink of the grand final. So 4 to go, 4 matches left. And look, it's been a real privilege to be a part of it. And I think the 3rd season of Major League is starting to show the potential and promise of where this league and the sport can get to in the United States. So it's been awesome to be here. I don't know, what is it, Central Time?
Central Time.
Okay,
yeah.
I got it right, Central Time.
Yeah, I could understand that. And again, had a pleasure meeting you last year at the Nepal-Netherlands game here in Dallas, which was good enough. Like, we could have won, obviously. But again, great seeing you in Oakland. I have this, I'm from, obviously, right now, based out of California. And I have this opinion about California that we should have more games because it never rains there. And Oakland, I think, I think it was a great turnout for the first time in Oakland, right? I thought.
Yeah, it really was. For me, I'm a big movie man. I love watching my movies, and kind of when I get into a movie, I end up usually overwatching it. And a film I've watched probably 40, 50 times. I read the book initially, Moneyball. To be there at the Oakland Coliseum for a new bat and ball sport for cricket rather than baseball. I'm not a big baseball fan. I lived in Chicago for a couple of years and kind of got into the Cubs quite a bit. We live very close to them, but to be there in Oakland at the home of that film, the former home of the A's for 60 years, to see cricket be so successful, to be there on the opening night when Phil Allen did what he did, I was kind of like walking in a fever dream for the entire week. Part of that was due to the scale of travel I had to do to get there, because I did a Nepal game on the whatever day of the week it was. Let's say it was a Wednesday in Scotland, travelled on an overnight ferry after a 4-hour drive to get to the west coast of Scotland, to then drive back down to Dublin to get a passport because I had to get a visa to get across here for the times that we live in. And collected my visa, was on a flight at 11 o'clock, landed at 3 p.m. And then the game was that night. So it was chaos. And then I looked at the roster, and one of the guys in their infinite wisdom had decided you're going to firstly lead the overs off right from the top of the broadcast and do the toss. And because it's a baseball stadium, not a cricket ground, there was, it's a rather cavernous old stadium. There was more than a few technical challenges on that opening day. So, all very surreal. Felt like I had a lot of goosebumps throughout the week. And the quality of cricket was really good. I was so glad the pitches stayed well. But just to touch on what you mentioned there, because in case we don't go back to it, that Nepal-Netherlands game when I first met you, one of my favourite days of cricket in history, even though I know a lot of Nepal fans will reflect, ruefully on that result. But the occasion, sold out Grand Prairie Stadium, I reckon all 7,200 that were there, 7,100 of them were in the blue and red of Nepal. There's a special pride of being a part of a diaspora or being an emigrant, and it's something that Irish people know so well. And it reminded me as an Irishman hugely of the 1994 or 1990 football World Cups, when, it's almost like a cultural awakening. You start to realise what you are as a nation as a byproduct of being overseas, and the pride of being from where you're from. And that day, from a cricketing context and just an emotional context, was unbelievable. And I couldn't walk more than 5 yards without meeting another person who wanted to say hello and tell me their story or where they'd come from. I think I met people from over 40 of the 50 states who travelled in. I met a gent from Australia who'd sold his car to be there, to sleep on his friend's couch in Dallas. There was a story Ian Bishop kindly told on my behalf on air. And then Bish himself said in the World Cup final that his favourite memory of the whole tournament was, June 4th in Grand Prairie. So, just to be there for that, one of my favourite days in my life, actually, to be honest.
No, I mean, that goes to show, like you've seen in Ireland itself, right, with the footballing history and the cricketing history. So, again, as a little thank you to you, I went to a lot of places. By the way, this was shipped from Ireland.
Is that right?
This was shipped from Ireland. So I believe this is a football jersey up.
Yeah, the green suits you.
Yeah. So no, thank you. And I'm a huge Irish fan, by the way, as far as cricket goes, and also like football. Back in 2002, I believe Robbie Keane was still playing at the time.
That was our last World Cup in football. Yeah, Robbie Keane and Damien Duff. Damien Duff was my favourite player. Yeah, adored him.
Huge Chelsea fan here, and
good.
obviously Duff played for Chelsea, and I think Irish got knocked out by Spain penalties 3-2.
Yeah, robbed
Round
in
of
penalties.
16, yeah.
We had a great one actually. Slight segue. Ireland played Germany in that World Cup, and I think the only goal that Germany conceded in the tournament up to the final, when they lost in the final, was. I think they lost in the final, was Robbie Keane's goal in the 94th minute. We were sitting our state examinations that morning, and obviously the time zone it was a night game in South Korea or Japan, whichever the two it was in, and all we heard was we were sitting our state examinations. Everyone, it was not optional to be there at that exact time. It was the same time as the game. And I kept remember looking at the clock and going, God, the game might be getting close to finish now. I was paying no attention to whatever paper I was trying to write. And all of a sudden we heard a huge amount of cheering, not within the school, but like outside the school walls, and a load of car horns beeping on the road. And again, it was right around the time of the finish. I think it was a 92nd, 93rd minute goal from Robbie Keane to equalise against this kind of unbeatable German side. And the invigilator, the guy who was taking the exam, was kind enough to say, guys, Ireland have equalised, it's 1-1 full time, get back to your exam, which he probably wasn't supposed to do.
No one was paying attention, yeah.
The sport transcends things, there's no doubt. And yeah, days like that in wherever it was in 2002, and then in 2024 from a cricketing context. I think there's so many things that Ireland and Nepal share, and maybe that's the reason I've such a special relationship with the country.
So Ireland being where it is, right? Obviously, you have the influence, or obviously the historical connection with England, or in that region. So you were a pretty good cricketer. You were a leg spinner, and then so. How did you find yourself into the cricketing world where, rugby is pretty big, right? Like the Six Nations rugby and football is pretty big. So how did you end up, weaving your way through and ended up like bowling leg spin? Take us through that.
Yeah, I don't come from a cricketing background or a cricketing family. I think my dad was aware of what the sport was, but he never might have played it a tiny bit in school or something, but he had no real connection. He loves his horse racing and kind of loves watching sport and talking about sport. But there wouldn't have been a huge family connection of any kind. And then if it wasn't for free-to-air television, we get English television for free in Ireland. So the couple of BBC channels and ITV and Channel 4 as it was then, they were as staple as RTE, which is our national broadcaster. And we also get very long summer holidays in Ireland. It's a historical aspect of the fact that we were always a farming country. So the schools ended early so that the kids could go and help farmers do their work throughout the summer. So we have a 3-month holiday in the summer. June, July, August, kids aren't at school. It's crazy really when you compare it to other countries. And what did I fill those summers as I was a 4 or 5, 6-year-old with? BBC and cricket. And I don't know what it was. I think there was something... Ireland in the sort of late 80s, early 90s was a pretty dull and depressing place. It was pretty grey. Everyone looked the same. We had no immigration. It was very boring. It was very economically and socially repressed. We had huge aspects and challenges in the country, no different to the kind of challenges that Nepal face now. We've had an amazing 30, 40 years of growth since then. But I saw Caribbean players on the television. I can vividly remember the likes of Viv Richards, walking out to the crease court in Greenwich, Desi Haynes, Malcolm Marshall, my favourite bowler at the time, and they beat England. And you said we have a relationship with England. We have a very complicated relationship with England.
Absolutely.
And now, look, we get on with everyone around the world. That's what we do as Irish people. We feel it's part of our duty, our cause. But the relationship we have with England, whereby they obviously ruled us and oppressed us and did all sorts of bad things to us, that now has just shifted to the sporting field. So if we can beat them in anything, it feels extra sweet. So for me, watching the West Indies beat England was, who are these guys? How are they so athletic and wonderful to watch? Their maroon caps, their swagger, their skill, their athleticism, and their joy. Carl Hooper, Shivnarine Chandrapal, as the game went through the 90s, Keith Arthur and Jimmy Adams. I adored these cricketers more than you can imagine. And it was merely a case of me hassling my parents. We didn't even have a cricket bat. We used to use a 2x4 and I'd harangue my brothers into playing cricket in the front garden purely from having watched. There was no YouTube, it didn't exist. So we would watch BBC. I'd try and imitate at first medium pace or fast pace with Malcolm Marshall because I was short always. Yeah, and then Shane Warne came on the scene in '93. I was 8 or 9, 8 I think, and I think everyone then wanted to bowl leg spin, and that's why I started bowling leg spin.
It had to be Shane Warne. It had to be the king, right? Okay. So as people may know, your voice is very unique, very. People. If you're talking, like, people will recognize your voice now. How'd your journey start as a commentator? Take us through that a little bit.
As accidental as you could ever imagine. I think the best things in life you stumble into by complete accident. I've been really lucky to be working in cricket for 15 years. Obviously started as a player, tried my very best to make it as a full-time professional, had a couple of years at Hampshire, went to the Centre of Excellence in Cardiff, kind of missed out on the last cut of a Irish under 19 squad with Kevin O'Brien, Boyd Rankin, William Porterfield, Owen Morgan, these kind of guys who went on to have unbelievable Irish careers. They would have been all my contemporaries, would have played a huge amount with and against them. And I probably was never quite good enough and certainly never trained hard enough. I wish I knew what I know now 20 years ago, but you can't do that in life. So didn't quite make it as a player, went into coaching, realised that kind of coaching was quite limited in terms of if you weren't a very well-known former player in terms of where you could go with it. Really enjoyed my coaching though, adored introducing the game to people and working at elite levels with Irish 15s, Irish 19s and Leinster youth sides right the way across Ireland and the UK. And then, Cricket Ireland was starting to expand. The game was getting very popular. That's the governing body of Cricket Ireland. In 2006-07, I think 2 employees. And then by the time I started with them in 2012, they would have had, 15 employees, and I was probably the 15th. I was hired as their marketing manager to help grow the culture of the game in the country. Probably giving away a secret here. I didn't really know what marketing meant when I got the job. I think I might have Googled it. But I had a huge enthusiasm and passion for the sport, and I think that's probably what shone through. And Warren Dutram took a real chance in me, who's actually just this week announced his resignation as after 20 years as Cricket Ireland CEO, who steered Irish cricket to all sorts of fabled heights that people never could have imagined. And then from there, I worked really, really hard for 3 years, went to the ICC. God knows how I got that job as well, because that was kind of head of digital at the ICC. And because I'd done all the stuff for Cricket Ireland, setting up their digital channels, I'd learnt a bit about it. But again, I didn't really know what I was doing. But when I arrived at ICC, we had a huge amount of success because, smartphones were exploding across the subcontinent and starting to, the penetration of them was going from, 1 in 10 people having them to 8, 9, 10 people having them out of 10. And I'm not sure I did a particularly good job at the ICC, but again, it was just a byproduct of being there at the right time, at the right place. So did 3 years of that, loved that, worked very hard. But 2015 World Cup was a huge memory for me. Australia, New Zealand, probably the best 50 over World Cup in history, in my opinion, followed by maybe the best 20 over World Cup in history in 2016 with the famous scenes of Carlos Brathwaite and West Indies doing the double with the men's and women's, and dozens of good games. And that was where we, again, thanks to my boss's guidance, she came up with the idea of kind of basically integrating completely broadcast and digital. So all of a sudden in 2016, we were part of the same crew, whereas it seems absolutely natural now because everyone watches these things on their smartphones. Back then they didn't. So we put crews in bed together quite literally with digital and broadcast. As a consequence, we got that amazing behind the scenes content cricket had never had before. The numbers went to the absolute moon. We had Predators, which is a producer editor, on the West Indies team bus, behind the scenes when they're winning the games. We had A.B. de Villiers out in the middle talking before a game as to how brilliant the match was. We had the Afghanistan boys who were kind of coming to life, beating the West Indies, showing us all their brilliance. So, that was an amazing 3 years to be a part of. And I'll be honest, at the end of that 6 years, I was probably burnt out. I'd done 6 years of kind of 12 to 16 hours a day, every day, living, sleeping, eating, breathing, every aspect of cricket. I just hadn't had a break. So I resigned from the ICC. I even saying it now, I can't believe it, because it would have been anyone's dream job who loves cricket. I went back to play one last summer of cricket before I was too old and too fat, which has subsequently happened now. But that was the first summer there was live streams in Ireland. So a very roundabout answer. I got asked, I was almost kind of compelled into they were like, we need a commentator. You know everything about cricket. Please do this. And I was like, oh, I'd rather be behind the scenes, which is ironic now, given you kind of have to put yourself front and center of things. And yeah, the journey since then, that was 2017. In the 8 years, I've been a full-time commentator now for 3 years. I've done test matches around the world. I'm working on something as world class as, you know, maybe the third or fourth best franchise league in the world in Major League Cricket. I can't believe it, and I love every second of it. I've got incredibly good relationships with all of the associate countries. With Ireland, my home country, I do almost all their internationals now. And yeah, do a lot of Afghanistan's internationals. Hugely grateful to everyone in the ICC, you know, my former colleagues who've kind of taken a chance on me to do a lot of their pathway events. The relationship I built with Nepal, I could never have dreamed of. It's, again, that feels like a fever dream, an accident, something that was meant to be. And yeah, it's kind of, I think gratitude is a huge part of, or should be a huge part of everyone's life. It's a massive part of my life. I've no idea how I'm doing what I'm doing, but I adore doing it. And hopefully for the benefit of the sport and to grow the sport and to inspire people to love the sport, that is what gets me up each morning.
Yeah, I think you, I mean, you could probably feel the love of Nepali folks whenever they see you. And one of my thoughts when I met you last year was I was probably one of the, 7,000s that were at the Grand Prix stadium. And I don't think you said no to anyone. And I'm like, dude, what is this dude doing? Doesn't he need to go up, and doesn't he have other stuff to do? But the humility that came with that, I saw that. And I think that's important, but also that's who you are, right? And again, I want to sincerely thank you for being who you are.
Thanks,
Andrew. And so, look, it just seems like you just look very cool, commentating on a game, right? You have obviously your headsets or your monitors on, but there's a lot of technicality that goes behind that. People don't understand it, and I'm pretending to understand it, which I don't. I can tell you that. Take us through a little bit of that, Andrew. Like what it was. I mean, you have your earpieces. You probably have the directors in your head telling, "Hey, this is a stat. Talk about this." Can you just give us a little bit of a picture of that?
I think watching cricket broadcasts, and I've no doubt you've watched thousands upon tens of thousands of games at all sorts of levels. You know, a very basic broadcast all the way up to the excellence of an ICC World Cup. It is magic. It's a unique sport to broadcast because of its 360-degree capacity, which is unlike almost any other sport, bowling from both ends. And whether it's a 6-camera production like we have in the pathway events, all the way up to, what have we got here? I think 24 on Major League Cricket. There are certain things that are the same, and then there's certain things that evolve and get more complicated and difficult. As the commentator, it seems simple, and it would seem kind of like, I'd say most people at home would be like, oh, I can do that, or I'd love to try that. It is quite challenging in terms of keeping on top of everything. You do have an earpiece in, which there's a huge amount going on in. You also have then a toggle in front of you, which has your levels as to what you want to hear. So the majority of those boxes will have 5 different things, which will be the program, which is the output of, you know, absolutely everything that's going out. It will have your commentator's voice and maybe your voice on another toggle. It will have the director's toggle, which is the guy who is basically dictating what every picture is that is shown. But on that director button, you may well have your producer as well, who needs to get across, you know, sponsor mentions or technicalities that you absolutely need to say. And also the director's assistant then, who is running the counts, which gets you to your ad breaks, which you have to nail, and back from your ad breaks so that you get a good, clean broadcast. You'll then also have a stump toggle, which can, you know, some commentators, I sit in after them, I'm like, they have it the whole way down. They can't even hear what the wicketkeeper is saying or whether there's an edge or not. And then your 5th toggle will be often your own voice as well. So everyone likes it set up different. Some people can't handle, particularly maybe some former players who just go straight into the box. They can't handle hearing anything. So you might sit in after them and they'll have everything turned off and they're just merely kind of calling blind. But as the lead commentator, most cricket broadcasts work that you have a lead or an anchor and then a colour or an expert or analysis. So I can do both roles, but very much I'll generally be hired as the lead or the anchor. I actually really enjoy doing both, but I think on the pathway events where we only have 2 commentators, I'll generally lead for the majority of the time. And then on a gig like this at Major League Cricket, they'll want me to lead because I've got Matthew Hayden or I've got Danny Morrison, who played a huge amount of international cricket, or Lisa Salaker, sitting next to me to get their analysis then as well. But I think on most broadcasts where people respect each other, there is a little bit of kind of crossovers of the roles. And if a spin bowler is bowling, things are very tight, and Haydos or someone's in the middle of a point, they might just keep going and actually call that ball then. I was really lucky in 2016 during that, actually 2015 during the Men's T20 World Cup qualifier, which was our first event of a new cycle, where ICC TV came into being, where ICC took the production as part of their own ownership, whereas previously it was always outsourced to a number of other entities. I sat in the back of the commentary box for that full tournament as a digital producer whilst doing all my other work, because for two reasons. One, I knew the associate game really well, whereas the commentators probably at that point didn't. And two, we wanted to integrate digital aspects to the broadcast, like fan polls, live tweets and kind of posts from fans on social media. And I was the one kind of getting those in, and I actually had the talk back to be able to say to the commentators. And what ended up happening on that particular one, not in an arrogant way, but I would have known a lot more about associate cricket than most of the commentators, so I was able to help them with who this guy is and that guy is and where they've come from and details. And the buzz, I remember saying to my mum and dad, because that was actually in Ireland and Scotland, I went down to see them, and I wouldn't have seen them much because I was living in Dubai, and they were like, how's it all going? And I was like, the buzz of live television. And I remember saying vividly to my mum at that time, I said, I don't know how, but at some point I'd love to get involved in that. I never thought I would be as a commentator, I promise you. But it was that buzz. It was like there was an adrenaline because you're live. And I remember the director's assistant in my headset that first time, just when I was a digital producer sitting at the back of the box, 10, 9, 8, counting down to live. And then, the graphics rolling and we're on air. And anything can happen at any point. There's no second takes. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I think that was probably the little hidden part of my journey that I haven't really told before that's ended up accidentally inspiring me to get into commentary.
Okay. And if you look at, the footballs, I'm going to say football. I know we're in America, but football for the next, for the sake of this conversation here, we're gonna talk about the European football. So you have commentators like Peter Drury and Martin Tyler. For me, like Martin Tyler is like no one can top. Peter Drury probably comes very close, but their voices are football to me, right? Champions League football, Martin Tyler's voice, hey, like 2 hours, don't bother, like don't talk to me, right? I just want to focus on this. What's the misconception about like cricket commentators, right? Can you talk us a little bit about that? Like, because there's a lot of players who were, or commentators who were players before that are now commentators, but you don't necessarily have to be a former player, right? Because you can still be and that's why I'm giving examples of Peter Drury and Martin Tyler. Again, I want to apologize in case they played at some level, but
I'm not sure if they did actually.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, talk about that a little bit. And what's the misconception about being a cricket commentator?
Yeah, I suppose John Motson would be the other one for me from a football perspective. Growing up in the 90s, Match of the Day and all that. Again, getting the BBC coverage. Cricket's somewhat unique as a sport. It doesn't overly heavily rely upon professional broadcasters or trained kind of whether they be from a journalistic background or a reporting background as their lead coverers. And that's not for me to say that former internationals don't have a place or former professional cricketers don't have a place in commentary in cricket. They absolutely do. In fact, the very best that we have, the Michael Athertons, the Ian Bishops of this world, the Nasser Hussains, for me, the best of the very best, were excellent former players. Two of them former England captains. Ian Bishop was a phenomenal bowler who would have been even better had his career not been, so plagued with injury. But they happen to be that. There's other exceptions to the rule where former players kind of walk straight into the box and, in my opinion, might not add a huge amount. And cricket is unique. You'll often have a broadcast team where there will be only former players on it. And I think the best broadcasts will combine on a kind of a combination. And the game, it's going in a bit of a wave because you think of some of the broadcasters of the 70s and 80s. My idol was Tony Cozier, who wasn't a former player of any great repute. Harsha Bhogle's done an amazing job in India as a writer who's kind of turned into an incredibly well-known commentator. People will go back further, talk about like a Robin Jackman in South Africa. Okay, he played, but again, he's more known as a broadcaster. Fazir Mohammed from the West Indies, one of my favourite. He's a journalist. I think to get the right mix of that kind of perfect commentary cake, if you will, I think you need at least one or two guys who are more kind of looking at it from a different angle and getting the best out of the former player. Whereas if, you just have, let's say, 6 or 7 former players in there, it can turn, into a kind of discussion that might end up that only former players might understand rather than fans. And kind of, you've got to remember you're broadcasting to a huge array of people who may not know the game at all, people who maybe have played at a really high level. And I guess to try and get right across that spectrum and keep everyone entertained and engaged is a real art and a real skill. And, the football commentators you're talking about there, they do it so well. It's like poetry, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I want to focus a little bit more to a country called Nepal. That's where I'm originally from, and you spent a fair bit of time out there. How did you come across Nepal, and what was your first experience going over there? Just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, Nepal is, famously everyone, I think they love when I say this, but it's also the truth. It's my second home. I spend as much time in Nepal as I do in Ireland each year. I've been there over 30 times now. I feel hugely at home there. I feel like it's part of my spirit and my soul now. And I adore the country. I adore the people, to be honest. That's what is a country. A country is its people. Borders are drawn onto a map. In Ireland's case, they're actually the island that we live on, but they're generally drawn onto a map in some capacity through some history. And the people of Nepal, the spirit, the joy, the happiness, utterly adore it. Very special place. I'm really pleased that I've such a connection with the country and I've been so taken in by it. I could never have dreamt of it. I'm still a bit confused as to how it's all happened. Being frank, I went over there to cover a league in 2018, one of the initial franchise leagues, the Everest Premier League. Got invited over purely because of Kevin O'Brien, who's one of my best pals in life. He was always captain of Railway, I was captain of Pembroke, and he was going over to play in that alongside Paul Sterling, who's one of my other best friends in cricket. And I think Kev really wanted a drinking buddy. That was the main reason. I just started commentating the year before and it was doing enough. And he asked the league owner, and the league owner classically was doing everything very last minute and managed to get me in for that full league. And because I was only kind of quite new to commentary, they were sending me up to the crowd quite a bit and doing those little sort of fan links. And I guess people just took to me. They immediately, I think it's very apparent as to how much I love cricket and how passionate I am about the sport. And that's something that is definitely reciprocated across Nepal. So there was that immediate connection. I also stand out a little bit there. I'm quite tall. I'm over 6 foot. I'm bald, as you see. So like a big, bald, white head, bespectacled, quite tall in a country that isn't particularly tall. I stand out. So I think I'm quite recognizable. I utterly adore the game. I've grown to adore everything about Nepal. Its culture, its food, its music, its beer, its love of a night out. It's so similar to Ireland in some ways. And I think my favorite thing about Nepal is that I feel something of an ambassador for the country now because of my connection with them. And I can assure you, when I arrived here at Major League Cricket, each of the, everyone in the crew and all of the commentators I was working with were immediately like, there's, the guy who does loads in Nepal. It's part of my life now. And the thing I adore about it is that everyone I recommend to go there loves it too. So I've had really high profile cricketers come to me and tell me that they, I was talking to Andre Fletcher the other day, who's got 2 centuries in this year, this edition. And before he went to Nepal, he went as part of the West Indies A side, just ahead of that T20 World Cup last year. And he got in touch with me and we'd messaged a bit and he goes, look, is everything safe out there? I was like, mate, you're going to love it. And he's talking to me there after he's made a century last week, coming up, and he says, namaste, and God, I can't wait to get back. And, that's one of the real superstars of the game, the Spice Man himself. But every single player I bring there, whether they're, Jimmy Neesham loved it last year. I'm not saying I'm bringing them there, but they'll kind of, as a fellow Westerner or from a different background, they'll say, what's it like there? Because I don't know what it's going to be like. And everyone who goes in seems to really enjoy it. There's so many things to do in Kathmandu. The valley itself is amazing. And it's not just about the mountains, it's about the people, it's about the culture, it's about the heritage. It's about their joie de vivre, their adoration of life, in often what are quite difficult circumstances. And there's huge challenges in Nepal. You will know them from your background there.
Absolutely.
And those challenges aren't necessarily getting any easier for people, even though it's 2025, you know, and the stuff with climate and the social economic challenges and the political challenges seem to remain huge, but the spirit of the people lives on for me. And I haven't been there this year. I'm really missing it, genuinely. Yeah, I'm really missing it.
Okay, I mean, hopefully you'll be there for the next edition of the T20 out there.
Let's hope that stadium gets completed.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Get it done.
And I want to touch on that a little bit. This is where I think I appreciated folks like obviously yourself, but also players like Martin Guptill and Jimmy Neesham. The fact that I mean, you know, you had like women had crushes on him and men had crushes on him, and you know all that sort of stuff. But the fact that you know he's such a elite player who's played in a World Cup final, almost won that. But the allure of the money might not be there, but he really went there for the people. I can tell that because I'm from there. I can definitely understand that. And then you know they were partying like the Janakpur team that won, and the party. It just looked very fun, right? So since you know you saw Nepal, obviously from your lens in like 2018 timeframe, obviously it's 2025 and 7 years. So how do you think Nepal has progressed as far as what you've seen from 2018? Until now.
Do you mean from the cricketing context?
Cricketing context, yes.
Yeah, look, cricket has evolved hugely. Yeah. There was always a rich potential there. You know, they'd been to the World Cup in 2014 with a quite iconic side, you know, a group of guys who mainly, with the exception of Sampal Kami now, are entirely gone from their playing days. You know, Paris himself, who's running the board as a secretary now or running the Cricket Association of Nepal and really driving things for the board. You know, himself, you think of Basanta Regmi, how good a player he was, Shardva Sakar, Gyanendra Malla, really good cricket, you know, Binod Das, I don't think he was at that World Cup, but, you know, players of that ilk, legends of Nepalese cricket that, you know, will be talked about for decades and decades to come, you know, the OGs, if you will, to use what the kids would say, the original greats. And that has kind of I think every single one of the 2024 squad would say that they were inspired by 2014. And one of the reasons they're either playing cricket or their cricket had evolved to a point whereby, you know, they've got into the national team setup was thanks to 2014. That shows the importance of World Cups. They're light years on from where they were 10 years ago. They're full-time professionals now. They're getting opportunities all around the world. The ICC structures and the Asian Cricket Council structures, the ACC structures, are so incredible that they're getting to play a volume of cricket that those OGs could only have dreamt of. They were getting half a dozen games a year if they were lucky at points. Now that you're looking at a calendar whereby, okay, this year might be a slight exception with the work that's had to go on the TU ground to get it up to a level where, you know, 2025 deserves. They haven't played quite as much cricket at home, but their calendar is pretty full each year. You're talking about a minimum of a dozen ODIs, several dozen T20Is usually. You've got the Nepal Premier League with all its brilliance and what it's brought to the game. And these guys are full-time cricketers, and they're also turning into in-demand cricketers around the world. We saw Dipendra Singh Airi and Kushal Malla get picked up in the ILT20. We've seen Sandeep Lamachani and Rohit Paudel play up in the GT20. I think they're being a bit under-scouted. I think actually there's more players that would deserve even more opportunities. If I was a franchise, I'd be signing a Nepal player in a heartbeat, both from their skill perspective, but also from the kind of the fans' perspective and a brand building perspective. If one of the major league teams, if the Seattle Orcas signed up Dipendra Singh Airi, all of it, or if the Texas Super Kings signed up Rohit Paudel, even if he doesn't play, you're going to see, you know, thousands of Nepal fans come along and just want to come and say hello and get behind that franchise. So for a young male or a female cricketer now growing up in Nepal, if you were, you know, 10, 11, 12, it's not going to be easy because the game is so popular there and there's so many players. And there is still a challenge infrastructurally. And I've said this before, it's not all about big shiny stadiums and 30,000 and 50,000 seats. It's about getting good quality cricketing facilities with grass pitches with indoor facilities. So when the monsoons are in, you can train year round. And there are some privately run facilities that are very good and good academies. But we need those right across all 7 provinces, right the way from west to east. You think about the popularity of the sport out in Sudur Pashim, and there is now talk of a big stadium being built out there. I don't think they need a stadium there. What they need is 4 really good cricket grounds that have indoor and outdoor nets. And that probably isn't quite as sexy as a big fancy stadium that, you know, the municipality can get behind. But we also have to look at all of this within the lens of the challenges that face the country. You know, people are struggling for work. People are struggling with air pollution. People are struggling with so many different things, more than 30 million people across the country. But sport, it's a great metaphor for life. It helps inspire so many people. And it might not just necessarily be about the 15 that go on to play for Nepal, but, you know, the person who grows up loving cricket, who becomes a great businessman. So seen that great case with that Extra Tech Oval down in Bhairawa, and you're looking at a guy who's gone to Australia, been hugely successful, always adored cricket, and come back and reinvested that money to try and help grow cricket down there in the Terai region. So there's a huge number of challenges that still remain, no doubt about it. Are things moving in the right direction? 100%. Could Nepal be the next test nation? I absolutely think so. Are they where Afghanistan were probably 10 years ago, 7, 8 years ago? Yes. But the key thing is, and I can't emphasize this enough, they cannot let the internal politics get on top of the broader picture and the more important picture of growing the game in Nepal and giving boys and girls an opportunity to go on to represent Nepal, and Nepal being the absolute focus and the pinnacle, and making sure that everything is being done to lead up to assist Nepal doing as well as possible on the international stage. Because the interest from overseas is there. The ICC look at Nepal as a poster child and go, if everything can get right with their governance, the fanaticism, and they've just got to start getting some better results on the pitch. It's coming, and I think Stuart Law's a very good appointment, and I think he'll go really well. But they still haven't beaten a test nation in men's or women's cricket. Scotland have done it probably a dozen times, if not more. The Dutch have done it probably 10 times, if not more. USA have done it. UAE have done it.
Yeah.
You know, Namibia did it. Namibia beat Sri Lanka down at the 2022 T20 World Cup. So Nepal is probably the best side in the world to never beat a full member nation. It will come, but I think everyone needs to get united behind, you know, the national identity, and they just can occasionally, and I never understand it because it's often done in Nepali language, and I don't know what's going on, but you can see that there is conflict in the background.
Sure.
And it shouldn't be about individual people. It has to be about the greater cause and the greater good of the country.
Yeah, the politics is extremely intertwined with almost every facets of life out there. And again,
and that's not just cricket.
It's everything.
It seems to be everything.
It's everything.
And I just smile. I'm nice to everyone, and I'm like, I don't know which side of the politics
exactly. It's a very complex system,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it just?
And,
but the history is there for a reason.
Yeah. And going back to all these countries beating like a test nation. And last year we almost beat a country. Now, I'm not going to ask you, did your heart break? I'm going to ask you, how many pieces? How was it? Like, what was the reaction after that? One loss to South Africa.
I think overwhelming pride was the immediate emotion in terms of that performance. South Africa, by all rights, should have won that World Cup unbeaten. It took a freak catch, probably one of the great catches in cricketing history from Surya Kumar Yadav in the Kensington Oval, and a bit of a collapse from South Africa. They needed 28 off 30.
30 out of 30 and punt.
6 wickets in hand. Klaassen and Miller at the crease.
Klaassen next. If you would have stayed there for like an over and a half, I think it would have been done. But again, it's a momentum too, right? Like
but they probably win that game 9 times out of 10.
Absolutely.
So by all rights, you're talking about the side that should have gone through the World Cup unbeaten, playing the best cricket of their lives with an unbelievable 11, and they were brought to their knees by Nepal. And again, 99 times out of 100, Nepal should have won that game. And I guess my only message to fans, because there was a negative response to that result. It was heartbreaking, of course it was. And you wouldn't be a fan if you weren't heartbroken and devastated by that. But for Nepal to get so close to a team that was that good and outplay them for probably 90% of the match, okay, the conditions were helpful, certainly in St. Vincent, and they very much favoured Nepal spinners who bowled exceptionally well, and they fielded brilliantly, and they did everything right with the bat right up until the very end. You have to look at that game and say, we've done everything right, and the next time we'll get over the line. But without kind of going through those heartbreaks, you won't get over the line immediately. Very nearly, and probably should have beaten Bangladesh in the next game again.
Even the Netherlands game in Dallas too, like that. It could have that catch from Rohit.
Yeah, Rohit dropped a catch, and he very rarely drops a catch. I've probably seen him drop half a dozen in his entire life. I think that game, the Dutch had the better of the conditions. There was a huge thunderstorm that very nearly meant the match was abandoned. And it was a huge disparity in between the two innings. I think if Nepal had won the toss, they would have won that game. But, I'll tell you the story of watching that South Africa game. I've got the tablet here. I bring everywhere. And I had access to the live feed. ICC are very good to us in terms of getting... I was working on the radio commentary for that for BBC Test Match Special, but I had an up-to-date live feed because we weren't going to get it. And Ireland, we were in Florida... I'm trying to work out the exact timeline. Ireland were either already out or about to be knocked out. Their competition by all means was over. So I was down in Florida. I couldn't actually physically commentate in the Ireland games for a Test Match Special and get to St. Vincent. It was impossible. Right. I looked at doing it just purely to go and watch the game, but I couldn't. I hope Paul Sterling doesn't mind me telling this because he's a very private guy, but I was with Paul for the night and Sterling said, do you want to go grab dinner? And I said, yes, but I've got to bring the tablet so I can watch Nepal. And he goes, I want to watch the game too, because he loves the associates, he loves the game growing. And we were sitting in a Mexican restaurant on Fort Lauderdale's Las Olas beachfront. We had the game on, and obviously for the vast majority of the game, Nepal were in cruise control. And he got to the halfway stage of the game, and whatever, South Africa made 120, 125, or maybe 130. And I said, they should chase this. They should do this. And Sterling goes, yeah, I don't know if they can. I said, no, I think they will. And then they're 50 for one or 50 for none or whatever it was. And I said, they can't lose it now. And it was just that we were having a few drinks, being honest. They had a couple of days off after. And I'll never forget that night. It was, and the amazing thing was then at the end of that dinner, we went back to the Irish team hotel. And I've got great relationships with the Irish players. They're all, Irish cricket community is tiny. We're all good friends. And I thought I might get a bit of stick getting back to the hotel because they like slagging each other off in Ireland is you can't wake up without slagging someone off. It's just what you do. And I thought I'd get back to the hotel and all the Irish boys who were there themselves would be, your team lost, yeah, they do. And I'll never forget it. Harry Tector actually came up and gave me a big hug and he goes, Lenny, I'm devastated. And all the Irish boys watched all the game and they all wanted Nepal to win. And that's, Ireland will always support underdogs. It's what we've done our whole lives. We are the underdog in life. And they were actually gutted too. And that, I know it sounds stupid, that meant a lot to me and that kind of helped heal I was gutted. Like, it was absolutely gutted, like everyone knew. And usually I don't mind who wins. I just want the associates to do well and the smaller teams to do well. But I was gutted. But just for the Irish boys to have that empathy, that night meant a lot to me. I know it sounds silly, but that meant a lot to me. And the fact that they cared meant a lot to me. And on a broader point, it's not about Nepal. It's not just about them. It's about how do we grow our game and how do we get more people to love our game. And, opportunities like the 20-team World Cup don't come around very often. It's taken a long, long time and a lot of advocacy from countries like Ireland to get it to a perspective and a point where the game is developing and growing and expanding. And I can't understand why some cricket fans from bigger nations don't want that to be the case. I think most do. And yes, there's going to be the occasional hammering. Uganda were bowled out for God knows what against New Zealand in a game, and Oman were rolled for 40 by England and Barbados. But there was also games in that World Cup where Nepal pushed the best side in the tournament to the very brink, where Canada beat Ireland and beat them comfortably, where USA beat Pakistan in a super over that created more headlines than probably the rest of the tournament put together. It was live on CNN and ABC and NBC the next morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do we not want that?
Yeah.
We should all collectively want the game to grow and expand. It's so important, because if we don't expand, the game eventually dies.
Yeah.
And the associate game has never been better. That is a fact. And it's a fact thanks to the ICC's pathways and all of the development structures that are in place. But they are still getting the absolute minimal of funding, the absolute crumbs from the table of a sport that is generating billions every year. And if we just gave them a little more, it's already a stupidly unlevel playing field. Like you're talking about for a Namibia to get on the same park as an India or an Australia, it is... Namibia probably have the infrastructure and player numbers of the smallest Indian state minus 10%, they have 10% of that.
Right.
But they've got to go out and play against, Virat Kohli. It's madness. It's madness. And they somehow do it and compete. If we gave them a bit more, they'd compete even more. We'd have a bigger, more global and growing game.
Andrew, I think with the South Africa game too, I mean, I was talking to Coach Desai on the last podcast as well. I mean, no one gave a chance, right?
No.
Like you're talking about a David versus Goliath, and you're talking about like an upset of like, between 0 to 10, it'd be out of scale, right? And that's what we were looking at for most of that game. You know what I mean? And that's where I think the Dutch have beaten South Africa, and you've had a lot of upsets. And I'm going to come to like the Irish cricket here in a little bit, but I think the T20 format, I think, has given this perspective in the world that a lot could happen. Like anyone can beat anyone on a given day. And that's the beauty about like any competitive sport where people like, let's say, a particular sport, for example, NFL, right? NFL here in the US, it's big because on a given day, any team can beat any other team. That's what it is, right? So no, I think you're right. I think the advocacy for the game is crucial.
But just to pick up on that, the reason that any team can beat any team on their day in the NFL is they've set it up that way. The draft rewards the worst team from the previous year with the best new crop of players because they know that competitiveness and jeopardy is the most important thing in any sport for a fan to be engaged with it. And, there's a lot of talk recently, I won't name who it was calling for India to get even more of the ICC's money. And I can understand the viewpoint, and I can understand why someone might say they deserve more of it because they generate so much of it. But ultimately, if India have no one left to play against internationally because all the other sides aren't able to develop and prosper, then it's no product to watch. There is nothing to watch. And surely, if the sides are getting to play against India, they should be worth at least half because you have to have a match. You can't play against yourself. And nobody wants a 12-month IPL. Even the Indian fans don't want that. They want their national team. They adore. We've seen the viewing numbers for the recent Test series against Australia, against England. We saw the viewing numbers for the World Test Championship where South Africa triumphed finally in an ICC event. We've seen the viewing numbers for the T20 World Cup where we had 9 associates out of the 20 teams there. But yeah, look, Sanjeev, you're totally right. When you get smaller teams coming up against bigger teams, you get those upsets. It gets everyone's attention. It's what people love.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. We kind of touched on this a little bit. So the Cricket World Cup, the regular 50 over. The previous one, I think, was 10.
Last 2, yeah.
Yeah, and then they're going to expand it out to 14. Do you think there should be more?
I think they've got the mix just right now. And I really hope that...
With the 14, you mean?
Yeah, I really hope that remains the case. I think expanding, using T20 as your growth vehicle is a nailed-on strategy, a really good strategy. As you said there, the shorter format gives you less balls for both sides and more chances for a side to really specialise in T20, understand all the dynamics of it and try to pull off the upset. I like the 20 teams having ODI status. I think a few people are talking, could that go to 22 or 24? And whilst I love all teams having T20I status, even though it occasionally means you have teams from a smaller nation gaining, a statistical record that people get very sensitive about over a famous Indian or West Indian or South African player or whatever. I don't mind that. I think that's all part of it. It allows every country, all 108 members of the ICC, to have an official ranking. It allows them to be part of the pathway to try and qualify for the T20 World Cup. 99 sides are trying to get to India and Sri Lanka next February. 87 of those have to go through the pathway, 12 qualify automatically, 8 through the Super 8 in the last tournament, then co-hosts in the next on the ranking. So it's a really fair structure. It's really fair. The reason I think 14 works well for ODI cricket is there is an elite aspect to ODI cricket and then an even more elite aspect to Test cricket. That's why it's probably right that it is restricted to the very best teams. And I think the ODI game has never been better. It's more entertaining than it's ever been. The quality of it is superb. ICC Men's Cricket World Cup League 2 for me is the best cricketing league in the world. It has more drama and more close finishes and more entertaining and engaging cricket than I've seen in any other league. That recent Tri-Series in Dundee was the absolute epitome of all of that. It just encapsulated it all in one series. And there was even an article on BBC Sport saying, is this the greatest Tri-Series of all time? And that's BBC talking about 3 associate teams, whereas 10 years ago, you couldn't even get a scorecard of those games live sometimes.
How do you enjoy the two super overs?
So I wasn't actually on call for the 3 super overs in the Tri-Series, but I was on call for the final ball where Nepal needed 1 to win. Karen Casey got them on to a ludicrous position with the scores tied. I don't know how he'd quite done it. It was a classic cardiac kids battling back from an impossible position. And then the surreality of Mark Watt bowling a ball down the leg side. And I probably need to describe this one because it was a wide down the leg side, but they also then tried to run the bye because they didn't know it was a wide. And the keeper, after fumbling at Matthew Cross, did run out Rijan Dakal. So naturally, when you see 2 batters running, your initial instinct, and I think most fans' instinct, because there was 700, 800 people in the ground, was to look at the square leg umpire to see if we're going to be able to complete the run. So no one was looking at the main umpire because everyone's saying, can he make the run? Because they make the run, they're going to win the game. And it's totally unique to cricket, this situation. They're trying to run that single, but Cross, after fumbling it, picks it up cleanly and runs the batter out, Rijan Dakal, and the square leg umpire goes out. So I'm on lead call at this point, and obviously I'm watching the batter and the square leg umpire. It was incredibly cold. We're in a marquee on the side of the pitch in Dundee, and I say it's out. We're heading to the super over, and then my eyes get drawn to the left where I see the standing umpire with his arms extended for a wide, and kind of to go deep into the well of cricketing knowledge to go, well, hold on, the wide will supersede the attempted run, and because it was 1 to win, the wide, and I'm just, all I said was Nepal win, Nepal win, Nepal win. And I think I then said on air something like, I don't know quite how they've won it. They win it by a wicket. Maybe they win it by no wickets. I don't even know. Has anyone ever won a game by no wickets? And of course, once the wide signaled, the run out, even though that umpire's given it out, that wide doesn't count. So it was a totally unique moment that's probably never happened in cricket before at any level. And yeah, for it to be live on ICC TV, for it to be Nepal involved, for millions and millions and millions of people to be watching and so engaged, and then it to go up on the ICC social media page the next day. And I think it's done. It was the same week that Heinrich Klaas and Nicholas Pooran retired from international cricket, and there was a whole thing about Kohli as well. And the most watched clip for that month on the ICC social media channels was that finish by a distance. And that's the scale of interest and interest and engagement there is in associate cricket when it's presented to people. So we've got to love our game a bit more and give it more support.
I saw the clip. I think you were at the hotel in Oakland with Adam Gilchrist. I think watching and
that was the triple super over.
I was trying to remember the words or the words that you use. Cardiac kids. That's what you call them because we like to make things exciting a little bit. That's what it is.
Your heart's always going.
Always pounding. So okay, well, I want to talk about Irish cricket a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
And you see, obviously, you grew up there. You played, at a pretty decent level, and you were involved with Irish cricket. It's a very close knit community, as you were explaining. So Ireland is a full member team now, and they're playing tests here and there. Do you think Ireland has progressed from where they used to be? Are they in the right pathway?
I think the elite sides, that the men's and women's are probably as good as they've been. Fantastically well run and coached, and their backroom teams are exceptional, and 2 very good captains. And there's probably a bit of bias in my admiration for Paul Stirling's captaincy because he's such a friend. But he's genuine. I think he's got the best cricket brain we've ever produced. And I may well include Owen Morgan in that, a bit tongue in cheek. Stirling's, the respect he has in Irish cricket, it's hard to explain. And actually, one of kind of my most personal favourite moments I've had in my entire life, actually, since becoming a commentator, was being on call as he went to 10,000 cross-format runs, which no one has ever done for Ireland, and he joined an elite list of about 90-odd cricketers that have done it in history. he's a special player, and the elite men's side are I think going really well. I think the general Irish community has a bit of concern as to what's underneath that and the depth and the number of the scale of reliance on overseas imports. You know, our last 4 capped players have all been, they might have had an Irish grandmother or an Irish passport some way, but they were all South African. And that's a concern, I'll be honest. And, you know, our journey at the very top level of the game really started out thanks to the support of imports, the likes of Trent Johnston, Andre Botha, David Langford-Smith, Jeremy Bray, who were all part of that squad in 07. But it was a bit different then. They hadn't come for cricketing reasons. They'd come over maybe to play a summer of cricket and do a bit of work or something like that. I think Trent came initially as a pro, and then they met, and all 4 of them fell in love with Irish women and very much became part of that Irish cricket community and were adopted Irish. And that's not to say that that's not the same for Cade Carmichael, who's sacrificed a lot, or Liam McCarthy, who's come up as well. But and Tom Mays, you know, they're great guys. And it's not really a concern or a xenophobia of any kind against guys coming in from South Africa. It's more about how many Irish homegrown and Irish produced players are we getting through our system to allow us to continue to compete at the top level. I think that's what the concern is in the community. The organisation will change, I suspect, a huge amount now with Warren Dutram moving on. He's obviously led us to the promised land of Test cricket. Ross McCollum, who was his chair for, I think, over a decade, did the most unbelievable job alongside him in terms of really, I guess, lobbying the ICC for growth and for change and to allow Ireland and Afghanistan to ascend to be full members. And the work that they did, particularly Ross there in the background in the ICC corridors of power, I don't think anyone will ever be able to understand the gravity of that and the importance of that, or thank Ross enough for that. So some incredible things have happened. Have we developed in the way in which we should have, and has the sport's popularity grown in the way in which Irish cricket fans would like? Probably not. We still don't have a stadium of any kind in the country. It's 2025, we're a full member, and we play all of our international cricket at 4 club grounds, 4 very good club grounds in Ireland, in Clontarf, in Malahide, in Stormont and Belfast, and in Breedy in the northwest. But they're club grounds. They don't have seating infrastructure. They don't have PMOA implementation in terms of dressing rooms that are up to international standard, broadcast positions for cameras, media zones. So everything is built temporarily, and that's why Ireland has played a lot overseas in the last few years. Played games in Chelmsford, in England, in Bristol. We played in Abu Dhabi. It's somehow worked out apparently more economical to be playing in Abu Dhabi than it has been playing in Dublin. And that's great to play South Africa in Abu Dhabi, but what does it do to inspire the next, you know, eight-year-old Andrew Leonard, who's a cricket tragic who wants to go and watch Harry Tector and Lorcan Tuckerbat? If you can't be seen, you can't be it, can you? So that's been a concern. I think they acknowledge that, they understand that. We've had to, despite getting more funding from the ICC, we've had to strip back on fixtures in recent times, which has been a huge concern for fans. So is everything rosy in the garden? I don't think so. Are the 2 elite teams still doing really well and punching above their weight? Absolutely. Will they be able to in 10, 15 years? I think a lot of Irish fans are worried about that.
Because the reason I'm asking that is I think the best World Cup for Ireland was 2007, where you beat, I think you beat Bangladesh and Pakistan.
Yeah.
And then you went back, and I read that they got heroes reception in Ireland. And obviously back in 2011, and I want to talk about this, you ended up beating England, right? So it seems like you had a sort of like a momentum back then. Maybe it has changed, right? But again, I want to also talk about your friend, your close pal. So let me tell you, this innings does not get mentioned that often, okay? 2011 World Cup, seemingly 111 for 5, chasing 320, whatever it was. Kevin O'Brien comes in and he smashes, at the time, this was like the fastest World Cup century. Tell us, like, Kevin, tell us what you know about Kevin and that innings in particular.
Kev is a champion bloke, probably right in the mix in terms of our greatest ever player, now our second most capped player. At the time, he was our most capped player, 389 before Paul Sterling went by him. Yeah, the century in Bangalore is Kev's most famous day, and Irish cricket's most famous day. To beat England is not something that anyone in Ireland ever thought would be possible at the game that they invented. Particularly from the position that they were in, 111 for 5, him and Cusack came together and flayed everyone, Anderson, Collingwood, Yardy, all around the Park Broad. And it was the most incredible game of cricket, which was what made it even more special. And it went from looking like it was impossibility to absolute certainty quite quickly, remarkably. The World Cup's fastest century of 50 balls. The greatest thing about Kev is that it did not change him even the slightest bit. And for him to go out 2 days later, Ireland's next game was against India, I think again in Bangalore. And he had a press corps of 500 plus people in a packed room. He had attention from all over the world. Probably hadn't slept for those couple of days with the adrenaline and whatnot. He just was still Kev up on the stage. So many other people would have changed and acted differently and probably got a bit arrogant and a bit bad to be around. He was just still the same Kev O'Brien that we all knew from Irish cricket, the same, son of Ginger and Camilla that we all knew and liked from around the traps, and the same Kev that I would have, competed against my entire life, him as captain of Railway, me as captain of Pembroke, all the youth sides. And yeah, didn't change a bit, hasn't changed a bit now. You talked about the importance of being humble and his humility. That's, I think, a trait that hopefully a lot of Irish people have. And even now to this day, he'll meet people who'll be, blown away by the fact it's Kevin O'Brien. And they'll be blown away by the fact of just how laid back and easy going, super chilled. We kind of call him King Kev just for the fun of it. And obviously his connection with Nepal, both in terms of playing initially out there and now being head coach of the Biratnagar Kings in the Nepal Premier League. And they didn't quite have the year they would have liked, but there was a lot of reasons for that. They had a lot of illness in the camp, a lot of injuries in the camp. Sandy probably didn't quite have the year he would have hoped for, and yeah, they didn't get through to the playoffs. But I think he's a hell of a he's already a hell of a good coach. I think he'll turn into a great coach in the years to come. It's all part of a process, developing and learning. But the players I know that have worked with him really like him because he's been there, he's done it, he knows exactly what players want, and he just supports them. And he's an incredibly close friend of mine and someone I'm lucky to be so close to.
Yeah, no, that innings, I actually just watched it last night as well.
Unbelievable.
It just does not get talked about often. It's right up there. I think it's like now the fourth highest. Obviously, you have the Maxwells and the Markrams. I forgot. I think the third one could be AB. But again, phenomenal. Again, it's a victory over England too.
Well, and that's what made it all the more special.
The best, right? The best victory ever. Okay, well, let's talk about, Andrew, one of the things that I really want to talk about is a player's caliber, someone like Eoin Morgan, right? Who, if you think about it, I think he's one of the best captains that England's ever had, most successful, a World Cup winner. But that was also a loss for Ireland, right? How do you classify that move? I mean, you've had like people like Kepler Wessels to like Luke Ronkeys to Dirk Nannes, like a lot of people that have played for like multiple countries, right? But again, they played at the highest level. But obviously, Eoin Morgan, he played for Ireland, and then obviously then he moved on to England. So going from associate to a full, or at least at the time or whenever he moved, still moved to like, in some ways, with all due respect to Ireland, he moved to like a higher level cricket in some ways. You want to call it that? But that's a massive loss for Ireland, isn't it?
Of course it is. And there's probably a few split feelings among some Irish fans. I think probably more going back when he first went rather than, I think there was just a huge amount of pride when he won the World Cup for England, which seems surreal within a rivalry that's been as intense as Ireland-England and all the politics and history that is around that. Special guy, someone I know very, very well, would have played a huge amount of cricket against. My dad discovered about probably a decade on from when it was that my only hat-trick in my life, he was the second victim. I don't really remember it, being honest. But he kept all the scorecards. He was always the scorer. And he's like, remember you got that hat-trick against Rush? Yeah, he was the second wicket. He was a couple of years younger than me. But I can almost imagine it as a drifting leg break that cut him in half and bowled him. It was bowled, I reckon. But look, Moggy is a great guy. He's a very, very focused guy. Moggy's what we call him in Ireland. Everyone does. In England, he's become Morgs. I'm proud of what he's done. I think it's incredible. It's great for me now to have a bit of a relationship with him in kind of a latter life where he's also a commentator and I catch up with him occasionally around the circuit. We have a beer, and he's a great guy. I think what he's done for English cricket in terms of revolutionising it has the respect of everyone in the country. The one thing that some Irish fans probably forget is that he went to Middlesex at a very, very young age. And there was a most brilliant hour-long documentary that RTE, the national broadcaster in Ireland, actually commissioned on him that told the story of his life so well. His dad, Jody, is an absolute inspiration, his whole family, a huge part of that Rush Cricket Club community there in Fingal, and one of the real hotbeds of the game in rural North County Dublin. I don't think for those who understood what it was when Ireland wasn't a test nation really hold him any ill will of any kind. He went over as a 15-year-old, and also he helped Ireland qualify for. He played in the World Cup in 2007 as a young guy. Did really poorly actually. We were all hoping he'd go over and show just how good he is because he was tearing it up in Irish cricket. But yeah, it struggled a bit, and then helped us qualify for the 2011 World Cup, and then I think he debuted in maybe 2010 for England. The initial plan was to try and be a really good, long-standing Test cricketer. That didn't quite work out for him, but he turned into maybe one of England's greatest ever white ball players, and a hell of a journey, a hell of a story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he almost won I think he was the captain in the 2016, 2020 World Cup final, and then obviously Carlos Braithwaite kind of took that away from England, right? Okay, one of the sections that I kind of wanted to start. And I think like you have your tablet ready.
You gave me some homework, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So
first podcast I've had homework for.
So Andrew, we want to go through Andrew Leonard's all-time ODI 11 with the 12th man, of course. So can you take us through that? Maybe let's go through maybe the openers. Who do you have for your openers now?
I've stuck a rule into it just to make it a bit more interesting, because I think otherwise you might just go to the greatest run scorers of all time and pick all them. So I insisted that you had to be from 12 different nations.
Okay.
And whilst I'd love to have got a load of associates into this, I've genuinely gone for what I think is the greatest 11 with just one from each country. So that means you can maximum of one Indian, one English, one Australian, etc., etc. I've also had to tinker with the batting order a little bit.
Strategy.
Because it's pretty ridiculous. I've ended up with no openers in the team pretty much.
Okay. Okay. So you don't have openers. Let's hear it.
I don't, but the two guys I've got as openers are more than good. I have a glut of number 3, 4s, and 5s.
Okay.
So strategically I may not have picked very well. And within this ODI all-time 11, they're probably not the greatest 11 in terms of statistically, but I've gone with guys that I think have the most impact on cricket and that I adored watching the most. That's the way I've done it. So here's my one-day international, which is one of my very favourite formats. I absolutely adore ODI cricket. Here's my greatest of all time, ODI 11, with the caveat that it's got to be one from each country. So I'm going to open the batting with Kumar Sangakkara and Joe Root, both of whom, I know Sangakkara opened a little bit, are better known as middle order players, but both are adaptable enough to go anywhere. Sangakkara is going to keep wicket as well. That World Cup in 2015 when he got 4 consecutive centuries, I don't think that'll ever be broken.
Technically, probably like you've chosen probably the two of the best technical batsmen of all time. Yeah.
And how Joe Root at one point was out of that English ODI team is beyond me. Phenomenal cricketer, and wouldn't usually wax lyrical too much about English cricketers, but do really like him. Virat Kohli has to be there, so I've gone with him at 3, probably the greatest in history in terms of ODI run chases. Maybe my favourite cricketer of all time, or definitely my top 5, Isaac Vivian, Alexander Richards. And one of the only actually from a kind of former generation. ODIs started, 50 years ago or so now. So a lot of the players I've gone with are a little bit more modern, but Viv in the 80s, I still think his innings, I reckon it was 189 not out in a Texaco Trophy game against England. I think it's still rated as the highest rated innings of all time because of the quality of the opposition and how difficult the conditions were and all that sort of stuff. No helmets, right? Swagger,
flair.
Botham and Willis bouncing him and hooking them into the stands for 6, sleeping before he went out to bat and just swaggering out to the crease with a chewing gum and that Antiguan flair. Adore the man. Also, slightly off topic, but the man that my mum adores and used to love watching, even though she didn't know what was going on. She'd be like, I could watch Viv all day. And wow, look, how could you not? Probably the coolest man in cricket. And actually, I've got one of the coolest men in the history of cricket in further down the order. At 5, I've gone AB de Villiers. Again, I think in terms of white ball cricket, probably one of the greatest of all time. that ability to play innings that nobody else ever could in any era. True great of the game. Really wanted to get an Afghanistan player in there, and I was a bit torn as to who to go with because I really adored the likes of Hamid Hassan. His injury was cut short. Career was cut short by injury. Shapur Zadran, Dalwat, some of those guys, Rashid Khan. But I've gone with Mohammed Nabi. They call him the president for a reason. He's still playing.
He's a great all-rounder. Yeah.
He started in World Cricket League Division 5. There was a stat at one point till he got a couple of injuries that he'd played every Afghanistan international ever in their history. Just ludicrous, incredible player. For him to be a classical off spinner in an era whereby people say that right arm off spin isn't a thing, and be so successful in his para batting at number 6, incredible. He could probably bat at number 7, actually. Maybe I'll stick Shakib Al Hassan in at number 6. Nabi at 7, but you could interchange them, the left hand, right hand. Shakib, yeah, for all of his interesting conduct at points on and off the field, one of the greats of all time. Incredibly good bowler and batter. And I think it was the 2019 World Cup where he was just on fire with the bat. He couldn't be gotten out. Number 8, had to get Shane Warne in there. Again, many will say, well, he wasn't that good at ODI cricket in comparison. I disagree. 1999 World Cup, they wouldn't have won it without him. And for all the talk of the Gadding ball, I actually think the ball, I'm pretty sure it was to Herschel Gibbs in the semi-final.
99, yeah.
Oh, the drift, the dip, the turn, pitching outside leg, hitting the top of off. That was maybe even a better ball than the Gadding ball, but the Gadding ball more infamous. From the Pakistan angle then, I've got a very deep batting line, bat all the way to 10. Got Wasim Akram. Think he's the second leading wicket taker of all time in ODI cricket. Needed the king of swing in there. Unbelievable cricketer, incredible human. He's at 9. Heath Streak at 10 because I wanted to get a Zimbabwean in there. Was very close to getting Sean Williams into the team with all of his heroics, but Heath Streak probably their best ever seamer. Really, really liked him. From an associate perspective, I maybe would have thought of getting someone like a Thomas Adoyo in from Kenya. A couple of other options, but I thought Zimbabwe deserved a spot in there. Sure. He's at 10. Trent Bolt at 11. So I've gone 2 left arm seamers. Almost too many options from the Kiwis' perspective. Got really close to going Guptill opening, but I just thought Bolt with his penetration with the new ball. Him and Wasim Akram to open up 2 left-handers. Oh, unbelievable. Heath Streak. And then all the spin options. Warren, Nabi, Shakib Al Hassan. Oh, that's a good-looking team. My 12th man, I've gone with probably one of my very favourite cricketers from the associate game and simply a legend of Scottish cricket. So Richie Berrington's going to be my 12th man. No bias in there, no Irish person even close. Yeah, Kevin O'Brien and Paul Sterling, obviously, worth a good mention, as is Ed Joyce. But
they're in the squad.
They're in the squad. Yeah, they make up the drinking side of the squad. Third players 13, 14, 15. I got Richie Berrington at 12. I think a criminally underrated cricketer, has turned himself into a great captain despite not coveting it now. Still going, first ever Scottish cricketer to play more than 300 games. I'd probably be more interested to give you an ODI associate 11 of all time. I don't think of fondly as a very higher echelons of the game for some reason, but yeah, that's my 11.
Come back to MLC cricket a little bit, Andrew. So, see, my expectation before going out to Oakland Stadium, I've never been there, and as you may know, I was texting back and forth with Simon Toffel, and I was telling him, wanted to tell him that stay safe around there because obviously Oakland has some issues, but
has a reputation,
right? But it's like any other. I mean, you have like cities in almost every city or every state that does have some issues, but it could be like the turnaround for Oakland too, right? And that was my first time. My expectation, let me tell you, Andrew, before I went out there with Coach Desai, my expectation was very low, to be honest with you. I was thinking, okay, you know what? It's a baseball field, may not have too many people. When I went there and started watching the game, my perspective changed, and I congratulated Johnny
Grave,
head of MLC, and I told him, look, first of all, it's a good thing that's happening to a city like Oakland because I think Oakland needs a turnaround, but also it's good for the game of cricket because California, I'm very biased. Like, see, when the game between Sri Lanka and Nepal was washed out in Florida, Andrew. Like I was sitting in the hotel room praying to gods all day. I'm like, can you stop raining? And also cursing at people for not organizing a game in California because I thought, again, it doesn't rain in California. This is like perfect weather, right? Well, so that's where I wanted to ask you from the MLC perspective, commentary wise, and also with the game, how it's progressing here, 3 years now. How do you see it moving forward?
I think the job that the MLC team have done is exceptional. Genuinely, I'm not just saying that because I'm part of the part of the crew that's here. Johnny Grave is the new CEO. He's coming in January. I think he would say that all the credit and praise needs to go to his team. Justin Gill and Josh Dascombe, David White, Zubin Sarkari, Mervyn Pereira. I'm going to forget people here as well. The two Chris's, the guys who come in there, the legal side, the marketing side, and the groundsman, Dave Agnew there at headquarters. Just phenomenal, really, really phenomenal. Damien Hoff, who's come across and helped from the Adelaide Oval, come up to help with those drop-in pitches at Oakland. And cricket at the Coliseum, like I said earlier, it was like walking around in a fever dream for a week. It was so surreal, but so brilliant. And the quality of cricket was so good. There was a few silly statements on social media about the boundary lengths being tiny. There was a couple of corner pockets that were reasonably short, but actually overall that the dimensions and diameter of that playing field were bigger than many IPL grounds.
It was pretty good actually. Like
74 meters straight down the ground. So
that was my point, because when I thought I was going to be a game of, I mean, they did back in 2015. They did Legends of the Game. I don't know, or
they did All Stars cricket.
All Stars cricket.
Dodger Stadium. They went.
I was actually in New York at the time, and then I actually went to that game, and I thought it was going to be something similar to that. That's what like my expectation was.
Where it was a bit crazy, wasn't it? They played in New York, Houston, and LA. Yeah, I was actually at the LA game bizarrely because I was out crossing the West Coast working for the ICC. We had some meetings with Google and Facebook, so I got to that game, but. That was a little bit.
That was my expectation before going to Oakland.
Yeah, it was a bit Mickey Mouse. That's what we'd say in Ireland. We'd call it's a bit Mickey Mouse that now there. The boundaries were tiny, and you were getting a cut shot to point that 30-yard circle was only just there. But no, the unique nature of the Oakland Coliseum, because it's the last remaining dual NFL MLB stadium, there are no more, and obviously the A's and the Raiders have now gone. It had that unique layout and setup that got it pretty close to it being a good oval for cricket. And actually the warning track is still in place. So if you turfed the warning track, you'd gain about another 4 meters for those boundaries, which I believe is what they're planning to do in the future if they can get back there. And the San Francisco Unicorns, one of the 6 franchise sides, deserve a lot of praise for helping to pull this all together. I believe there's some talks going on in the background about how they can not just get access for future seasons of Major League, but maybe even enter some kind of an ownership of the stadium. And I think you're right. I think it could save the stadium. I think it could help, certainly promote the city right the way around the world. The crowds were, for a 64,000 seater stadium, you might think not very good, but from a cricketing perspective in the States, we're really good.
Absolutely good, yeah.
7,000-8,000 every night. And it's already the 5th biggest stadium in the history of cricket, or that's currently active, just like that. And I can't give away too much, but there's some pretty ambitious stuff that they've got planned for next season.
Okay.
Not just from an MLC perspective, but from a cricketing perspective on the West Coast. Really exciting stuff. And Johnny is a very ambitious guy. He did a remarkable transformational job for Caribbean cricket down when he was the CEO of Cricket West Indies. I think they've appointed just the right man as their CEO. I think what Major League Cricket could become in years to come, it's pretty well advertised. They'll have 2 expansion franchises, most likely in 2027. Talks of Toronto and maybe Chicago or an Atlanta, or who knows, a Florida franchise. Let's see how that plays out. But the potential is huge. And, you talk about 200,000 weekly cricketers here. There's probably several million cricket fans. There's a few different estimates as to how many exactly that is. But the most encouraging thing for me throughout the season has been, American fans who know nothing about cricket or know very little about cricket, who've come for the first time, are having a great experience, and they're saying this is so much fun. And it's not about it being better or worse than baseball, and we're not trying to say it's better or worse than baseball. It's different. And it's just so great to see a ballpark like the Oakland Coliseum be reused as a bat and ball park. It's cricket, not baseball. It's different. We probably have, in some ways, a bit more action, but in other ways, a bit less. But it's just different. And I think we need to embrace sports fans. I think the season that we've had with all the final over finishes, with all the really high scores, with all the amazing individual performances, with, Faf du Plessis lighting it up at the age of 40 and going so well. I think we've seen 18 totals of 200 plus. We've seen 7 Centurions, seen a couple of 5-wicket hauls. We've seen half a dozen final ball finishes, probably a dozen final over finishes. You couldn't have asked for more. And I really hope, I know we're recording this now right on the eve of the playoffs. I don't know when it will get out, but I really hope the playoffs go as well as the group stages have, because they couldn't have gone better. And you talk to the players as well, and all of them love being here in the States because it's different. They don't, historically, wouldn't have spent a lot of time here. They love everything that America is, the food and the people, and they love playing golf, and they love, have introducing people to the game. Can MLC do a better job at years to come in terms of engaging even more new people into the game? Of course they can, and that's what they're planning to do. And I think with the 3 venues, we took cricket to Florida for the first time for MLC, and that's obviously got a special place in American cricket fans' hearts, with it being the site of so many internationals for them, where India have come to play games, where West Indies have come to play games. That's a great facility, the Broward County Stadium. So I think you've got, and Grand Prairie, we haven't even touched on, is world class in everything it has. Some of the best outfield, probably the best cricket outfield I've seen in the world. One of the best squares going, an amazing team running the stadium. And the work and the hours that these guys have done to make this happen, I cannot speak highly enough about them. And I think if we could transport that team that's running MLC into every other part of the cricketing world, cricket would start to thrive. I think it's a matter of if rather than when it will go really mainstream. It's not really mainstream yet.
Sure.
They're not pretending that it is.
Right.
It's not. It's not as big as Major League Soccer or any of the established four.
Right.
Your NHL, your MLB, your NBA, your NFL. It's nowhere. It's not even touching, a small percentage of that yet. But, these things take time. And what's been most encouraging has been the performance of some of the American players as well. Sanjay Krishnamurthy's innings the other night in the final group game, exceptional. One of the innings of the whole tournament, 92 off 40. I'd love to see some of the younger American players get more of a chance. I think, again, MLC recognise that and they'll implement that in future years. It's really exciting to be part of something that's so new, and I can't wait to see where that's going to be in 10 years' time. Yeah. And it's rare, being honest with you, I'm such an international cricket fan, it's rare I talk so glowingly about something that's a franchise product, but I think it's actually the right model to really get new eyeballs and new people into the sport here in America, given that franchise sport is what they're used to.
And I think having cricket, I think they're going to have cricket at the Olympics in 2028. So I think, again, California, I'm very biased towards California. Please organize more games in California. It doesn't rain there. Okay?
Pomona is where it's going to be, about 45 minutes from downtown.
That's like 20 minutes from my house. So
there you go. Yeah, they've identified the site. So and then hopefully, and again, I would expect this will be the case with MLC, hopefully the LA Knight Riders will be able to work closely enough with the IOC and the ICC to say, right, let's not do what we did in New York, which was a temporary pop-up where there's no legacy left.
Right.
Let's make sure, okay, if you need to build really big, let's make it modular so we can have a bit smaller and we can keep that in the future. And then hopefully that'll be the home of the LA Knight Riders for, I don't know when it will be complete, maybe 2027 or whatever. But yeah, let's get MLC games there and have a legacy from that Olympics in 2028.
And I think you showed when you left Florida this time around, you were kind of going back into the section where you're just, you have all the directors and everything, everyone, right? That just goes to show there's a lot of work that actually goes on behind.
Incredible.
And the number of cameras you mentioned, was it?
I think it's about 24 or something like
cameras,
that.
right?
I might even have underestimated that, but just to interrupt you for 10 seconds, just to give that crew a shout out, because they haven't had a day off I think it's about a month since we've been here, the 30 days, and we've worked reasonably hard as commentators, but it's a pretty luxurious existence, I assure you. We get to the ground later than all the crew do. We leave before all they do. And that, for them, that last game in Florida ended at close to midnight, and then they still had to de-rig and be in a flight at 8 a.m. to then come and set up here in Grand Prairie. Trojan and heroic efforts, and that's actually why I stuck that little video up, just as a little thanks for the way in which they covered those 30 games, and the broadcast coverage has been excellent.
That was going to be my point too, like the quality that you're seeing, it's top notch. This is not
top of the bus.
This is, you're not. You're talking about. I was thinking, whether we're going to get like all the full cameras and the DRSs and everything.
Everything.
You have everything, like the entire. The whole enchilada, if that's what you'd call it. Right?
It is a world-class broadcast, and an honor to be a part of it.
Okay. Andrew, what's the misconception about a cricket commentator, if there was one, or many?
I think it's about 24 or something like that. I might even have underestimated that, but just to interrupt you for 10 seconds, just to give that crew a shout out, because they haven't had a day off. I think it's a 24 or something like that.
Okay.
Look, I guess I'm an outlier. I'm coming into this from a non-former playing perspective, and I've accidentally stumbled into it from kind of, playing, coaching, administering, and then working on the digital side of things. So I would like to think from my end, I bring a more holistic approach to commentary and very fan focused, and hopefully promoting and making people excited about the sport. I don't know what a misconception would be about them. I guess maybe some people might think it's easy. It's actually there's quite an art to it. I really think good commentary, there's an art to, rather than a science. I don't know what misconception there might be, but look, I just adore doing the job and really hope that I even saying it to you now, mate, saying that I'm a full-time cricket commentator. And that was, for me, up until 2021, I was still working quite a lot on other projects in the background, freelance stuff, and was working closely with USA Cricket, helping them in capacities, and a couple of projects back in Ireland with Cricket Leinster and stuff like that. And that was all kind of, digital and commercial and comms work. And for, me to take the leap, and I think it was 2022, to become a full-time commentator. And now when I introduce myself to people, in a social setting, and they say, what do you do? Before it was like, I'm a digital nomad, I do a bit of this, a bit of that. But to be able to say now, quite proudly, look, what do you do? I'm full-time. And in America, we were in a bar last night, or a restaurant last night, and we were with Matty Hayden, Danny Morrison, Pommy Mbangwa, Jeff Crow, who's an absolute legend of a guy, one of the match referees, Paul Blocker-Wilson, the TV umpire. And we were all sitting around, and we were chatting to the waitress, who was of Colombian origin but born in Dallas. And as you do, you get chatting, and she said, what do you guys all do? You've got accents from all over the world. And we said, we work in cricket. And her response was, you mean the cell phone company? And I'm not telling that story to like, she was lovely, she was awesome, but like, that's, I guess, the journey we still have to go here in America. And we all kind of collectively had a chuckle, and she was lovely, and we got on great. But it was more, we still have a way to go. And I was like, no, that guy across there, Matt Hayden, he's literally in the ICC Hall of Fame. He's an actual Hall of Famer. And she's like, what? I was like, cricket, the sport. Oh, I think I've heard of that. Is that the one with the bat? And, very limited knowledge. And she wasn't really big into sports, but we were able to say, that's the Jose Canseco, or that's the Tom Brady of our sport. And she was like, what? She's like, what? Unbelievable.
Right.
And then she took out her phone, she Googled him. She's like, oh my God. And, I guess you go back to that being a kind of an evangelical worker for cricket, spreading the gospel. It's a gradual thing. I got an Uber at some point on this trip where I met a half Mexican, half American lady. She was lovely. It was a long drive, so we'd like a 45-minute drive. I was coming back from a golf event. And about 20 minutes into the journey, she said, what do you do? And sometimes if you're tired, you might just be like, you might say I'm here for work, but then they'll say, what are you here? And I never like to lie to someone. And I think some people in cricket don't like proudly being from cricket, but I'm really proud of it. So I said, I work in a sport called cricket. And I was waiting for her to go, the cell phone company or what's, is that croquet or is it lacrosse? Confusion. And she turned genuine. He goes, I love cricket. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, I got massively into it during the COVID lockdown. I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, there was I had nothing to do, and I was getting into new things on YouTube, and I started learning the rules of cricket. And I was like, really? And yeah, she didn't actually know Major League was on. She came to the game the next night, loved it. She'd educated herself in the rules, and it ended up kind of during the lockdown, obviously out of work or whatever, watching a lot of cricket. I think she said it was the 2022 T20 World Cup, which was the perfect time zone because it was Australia, which I think was nighttime here, or whatever way it works out. And she was big into it. And again, I wouldn't have known that or thought that. But yeah, look, the gospel is slowly spreading. The key thing is anyone who's introduced to the sport, we need to make sure they have a good experience. And we need to make sure that we don't condescend them or belittle them, or, you don't know how to signal a six. Like that's not like, right. Or you don't know the terms. That's not what it's about. It's about, do you enjoy the fun of the game, the wonder of the game? A bat hitting a ball, if you've never picked up a bat, whether it's a baseball or a cricket bat, that is so much fun. There's not like the feeling of just the purity of that. And then from my end as a bowler, the feeling of making that batter look like a fool and getting them out, that's fun. And that's the thing. Like when I was a development coach in West Dublin and introducing the sport to people who had no idea, no frame of reference of it, if you make those sessions fun and those initial introductions fun, the sport is so fun. We've got a great product. We're not proud of it for some reason. I don't know why we're not. And we get ourselves tied up in these crazy rules and nonsense. It's just the purity of the game is throwing and catching a ball, hitting a ball with a bat, or bowling a ball and getting someone out and running around the field. All of those things are really fun. You break down each of those individual skills. It's a lot of fun. And the thing that has encouraged me more than anything is meeting genuine American people who have no frame of reference or background into the sport, who often here in America have traveled quite a way to come watch a game, have a great experience. And Aman Patel, who's one of the youngest guy in our broadcast crew, who's out doing the crowd pieces mainly, has done a brilliant job at, talking to them, getting their stories. And a lot of those have really, really stuck with me. There was up in the Coliseum, there was the talk of a mother and son who'd come along. And the only reason they didn't know anything about cricket, was because they felt that any team that is playing at the Coliseum deserves their support, the home team. They went to all the Unicorns games then, became Unicorns fans, got a Unicorn jersey, got a Unicorn bucket hat. And I think even though America is an amazingly broad and diverse country, it can be pretty parochial in terms of local support. People from Boston want to get behind the Red Sox, 100%.
Absolutely.
Chicago want to get behind the Cubs. If you're from Dallas, you're a Cowboys fan, that's it.
Yeah.
So as the franchises start to expand and as critically we start to get more grounds, when Washington can go up and play in Washington, you're just going to get people behind it more and more. And that will help broaden the base of people who know what cricket is, so that when you say you work in cricket, they don't say a cell phone company. They say, oh, that's cool. I love MLC. And we're getting there. It's going to be gradual. It's not going to happen in a year.
Of course.
It's a couple of decade project.
And I think the grassroots is key. I think
couldn't agree more.
I had a brief conversation with Johnny on this as well. But again, I'm actually going to have him on maybe in the next couple of months. By the way, which the schedule is pending. But now think of this, right? Kids. Imagine kids demanding cricket, and they're demanding it, and parents have to give it to them, right? And that's the way to move forward. So go to middle schools and like the elementary schools, teach them cricket.
Boys and girls clubs, scouts.
Absolutely.
Get them involved.
Yep, absolutely.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Okay. I know you, so first of all, Andrew, it's, I think whatever you've done so far, it's very commendable. I think it's, we love your commentary. Again, there's millions of people that's going to endorse that statement. What's in the next, or what's next in chapter of Andrew Leonard, if you were to think about it?
I'm glad I didn't know these questions before you asked them. I have no idea. I could never have predicted what I'm doing now, so I wouldn't like to predict where it's going to go. I really hope continuing this journey. I think if I wasn't enjoying this journey, because I can assure you some of the jobs and gigs you go and do, you're not exactly doing them for money, if you know what I mean. You're doing them for the love of the sport. And I would just hope that to continue to enjoy the journey and see where that takes me. If you'd told me 4 years ago I was going to be one of the 6 or 7 commentators on a new American cricket league that's getting hundreds of millions of viewers around the world and inspiring people to play cricket in America, I'd have laughed at you. So God knows. But I'm hopefully going to enjoy the journey. I'm probably at the happiest point in my life that I've ever been at. And that's not to say I wasn't happy before. I feel pretty blessed and pretty eternally grateful to be doing what I'm doing.
Okay. I had a post that was sent out, and then we have a few questions for you from the crowd. So let's kind of dive into that. So I've got Ankit Valkaji from Idaho and Ramesh Trastor from California. They have the same question, right? So actually, Jose, can we bring that audio or like the video on real quick?
My oh my, they are going up, and I'm not sure if the crowd know it. And we're going to check. We are going to check. I think this could be the moment. They're sprinting on. They know they're ahead on DLS. This is extraordinary. Mohamed Wasim is protesting. The crowd think they're going to Zimbabwe.
Question was, obviously, we can kind of hear it in your emotions, how you're describing that. So they want to ask, just describe your feelings, where the crowd stayed despite the weather and the challenge and potentially like a heartbreak too. But can you describe your feelings while you were announcing that?
Yeah, that particular moment is well, it's unforgettable, isn't it? For those who were there, and there was over 30,000 there, both in and around the TU, it'll be a moment they'll never forget. I think it's very difficult to describe. I think that particular clip now has done over 40, 50 million views online in various guises. A lot of people who watch it don't understand what's happening, because it's amazing that one of the most viral cricketing clips that there is doesn't have a single ball bowled in it. And I guess that's what makes it all the more incredible. I guess to very quickly explain what happened first, and then I'll explain my emotions. It was the end of a game that had ebbed and flowed unbelievably. Nepal needed to win it to qualify for the Cricket World Cup qualifier in Zimbabwe. Just 2 months prior, they'd looked almost destined to finish in the bottom two and be in jeopardy of losing their ODI status. And they went on this incredible streak under their new head coach, winning 10 from 11 coming into that game, and then ultimately 11 from 12. The only way they could get there was by winning 11 of 12 matches, or maybe 12 of 12 matches, and having other results go their way. You could play those series of games 10,000 times. I think what happened might only happen once. It was that extraordinary. And then to finish in that style, again, cardiac kid style, being behind the Duckworth-Lewis Stern, which is the algorithm that we use to see who's ahead at a certain point in the game, and for the game to end because of bad light with 6 overs to go, or whatever it was, and for Nepal to be ahead by just a fraction, just staggering. And an ODI between two associate nations getting the attention of the entire cricketing world and beyond. I remember that night getting home, and you always kind of self-reflected on how you commentate and how you've done it your day of work. And I remember going, God, I think I've done that injustice. I don't think I've done a good job in that. And I remember I collapsed on top of my bed without even taking my clothes off, just from sheer exhaustion and the emotion of the day. And I then obviously the next day watched it back, and I went, hold on, that's actually okay. And it works. And like all I was really doing was describing what I was seeing, because it was a very basic broadcast. We didn't have communication to a director or producer or the match referee. I didn't actually know what was happening. And I'm really guessing and fumbling for words, but, I'm just describing what happened. They're going off. My sheer, I did have a DLS sheet, so I at least knew who was ahead at that time. And then it was, I can only thank the players running on and celebrating in a style that they did, for me being able to go with it and presume that was it. And then I can't remember, it's either Buddy Pradhan or maybe Wilmer Osiri from Sri Lanka who gave it and that's like, the bails have come off. You're probably done, but it's bad light, so you don't know if you could get back on. Right. So you're really just guessing, and more luck than judgment. It's turned into something that it is now. And it was the culmination of an extraordinary 12 weeks. And, for an associate v associate game to get such attention, that's probably what made it all the more special, alongside what it meant to the nation and the 30,000 that were there, and the several million that were watching on. I'll never forget that day.
I think, look, people wanted to know whose voice was that, because it got tied to this very special moment for Nepal, right? And obviously it just kind of applied in certain ways where people associate that moment with your voice. And I think that's why, at least I think I also probably started to recognize you, because you started to like kind of come on my Facebook feed. The algorithm was like, okay, you're from Nepal, you like cricket, here's the right guy for you.
Those algorithms, how do they know?
Next question, Sagar Gimire from Texas asks, has there been any talks that you know of between Cricket Ireland and Nepal on any upcoming series?
We got really close last year. It's something I see as part of my duty of care to the sport, to try and assist wherever I can, just with what connections I have, putting people together and explaining how things might be possible to get more international cricket played. The associates do not play nearly enough against the Test nations. It's you talk about duty of care. There's a duty of care of those big nations to support the smaller nations. And outside of 3 T20s that Australia played Scotland in, And outside of 3 T20s that UAE played and beat Bangladesh in a 2-1 series win recently, they're the 6 associate V4 member games we've seen since the last T20 World Cup. Shocking. And when there was 7 test sides in England this summer between the World Test Championship and the sides that are touring England, not one of them is playing against Scotland or Netherlands. Not one of them is going to, West Indies went to Ireland. Like, we've got to do better as a sport. That's what I think USA will start doing. Sides going to West Indies, come to USA as well. It's great preparation. There's economies of scale that, rather than having to fly all the way from Australia just for the West Indies, you can, stop off and whatnot. And we've seen Nepal manage to do that with the series they've announced in September against the West Indies, which is phenomenal. So we got close last year with Ireland, Nepal. I was trying to get across to Ireland as to how special this could be to be the first test nation to go and play with a full member side in Kathmandu, and the crowds they'd get and the quality of cricket they'd get and the upside from it. It just didn't quite work from a financial perspective for Ireland, so that's why the A team went in the end, and Nepal played the Irish Wolves, which is their A team, in a series of 8 games. Full side played 2 of them. I think that was 6 or maybe 8 against the Nepal A team, which was actually great for Nepal A as well. But if it's not a full international, it's not quite the same. You don't get the broadcast, you don't get the fans, you don't get the status, the statistics. So I'm trying, and I'll always beat that drum. I know there's plenty of people in Cricket Ireland that would love to make it happen, but again, I would say, well, hold on, Cricket Ireland, there's a duty there. If Nepal have gone all the way to Scotland, why aren't we trying to get them a couple of games in Belfast? It's literally a ferry journey, and that's, with the bizarre geopolitics of Ireland, that's actually still part of the United Kingdom. Wouldn't even need a new visa. So the problem is cricket costs money. This is the challenge. Hotel rooms, umpires, broadcasts. You can't just go and play in a field, which is what we all want to see cricket. We all want to see international cricket, but there's certain minimum standards that mean that it costs money. Now, the brilliance of Nepal is because of their fanaticism and because of the scale of media interest, you can do it very equitably. You can in fact make money on these series, whereas a lot of international cricket loses money. So to not be a loss leader, to be able to, say to, and I think with the TU ground completing to a much higher standard now when that finally finishes later in the year, I think hopefully there'll be a case of, I would love to see a marquee team come, and I'm sure that's what Paris Kadka is thinking, and the Cricket Association of Nepal's board, in terms of let's get a, is it Pakistan who come and play the first ever full member international at the newly renovated TU ground in a 3-match series? And I think, there was talk about maybe Nepal going to Afghanistan. There's obviously security and political challenges there. That's nearly happened. These things are being discussed in the background. It's just a case of making them add up and making them happen. And certainly, I can't think of anything better to commentate on than series of that nature.
Yeah, that'd be great, like Nepal against Ireland, right? So, Avinash Loni, and he's from Utah. Actually, a good friend of mine. He used to play very good cricket at a very elite level back in Nepal. So him and I, we have a similar question. So you, someone who's sort of, you love Nepal, but you're an outsider in the sense you're seeing it from a commentator's lens, right? Or someone who's seen the game from outside Nepal. How do you think Monty Desai's tenure affected Nepal? Because I was gutted that Stuart Law, I think we have a good coach we got a good coach. But I also felt that personally, I was a little gutted that despite, doing fairly well, his contract didn't get renewed. So how's your thought on his tenure?
I'd absolutely be in agreement. I think another 2 years of Monty would have been a very good thing. He did a wonderful job. I think because there's so much fanaticism and emotions around cricket in Nepal, people even involved at the higher levels ride that wave of when they're winning, Nepal are the best team in the world. When they're losing, we're terrible and everything has to change, and we sack the captain and sack the coach. And you need to remember that at the elite levels of associate cricket where Nepal are playing, the game is ludicrously competitive and very difficult. And then when you go up and play against the full members, you shouldn't be winning those games. You can't have an expectation that you're going to win those games. If you do win them, it's a massive bonus. If you compete and play your best cricket, that should be your goal. Monty transformed cricket in Nepal from a position where it was, being honest, on its knees in many ways in late 2022. I thought Dav Watmore had done a very good job. I didn't really get to know Manoj Prabhakar. His era was obviously on the pitch a bit of a disaster. That tenure was very short. And then they went with a 2-year contract for Monty. On a purely personal level, I would have loved to have seen him get another 2 years. I thought he did more than enough to deserve that. Took them back to the World Cup for the first time in 10 years, took them to the Asia Cup for the first time in their history, hugely competitive against India in that. Had their moments in a big way down in the Cricket World Cup qualifier, and Zimbabwe got them there miraculously. Very nearly beat Zimbabwe down there. Had that 190-run opening partnership where Ian Bishop was sitting next to me going, Lenny, everything you told us the night before at the commentators meeting, these guys can play. Because I was getting mocked a bit, going on about how brilliant Karen KC and Dipender Singh Airi and Gulshan Jha and Kushal Malla were. And they were all going, yeah, you're going over the top here. You don't actually know real cricket. But then they make a 190-run opening partnership against Zimbabwe, and Bish is going, these guys can play, and Andy Flower was he was going, where are these guys coming from? And then I think it was Andy Flower that ended up bringing Dipender Singh Airi to the Gulf Giants. I think he was coaching there. Whatever. Anyway, so I would have loved to see him get 2 more years. I thought it was strange that he didn't. But equally, he's a pretty pragmatic guy and a very spiritual guy. He's a wonderful human. Maybe he was just the right place at the right time for that period to bring that dressing room together. It was very fractured prior. And maybe now that kind of, I still don't quite know what that winning Australian mentality means, even despite playing against so many Australians. It seems to be just baked into them, doesn't it? That they are winners and so competitive. And look, Stuart Law's a very, very, very good coach. He was an excellent player as well. But I think he'll be really successful, like what he's done, bringing Nick Pothas in as well and Gyanendra Malla to kind of keep that Nepal flavour. And yeah, I would hope that the best days are still ahead. I just hope that Stuart Law gets given the time. Like, he obviously had a great first series, but if they have a bad next series, that's
right.
Just allow the project to...
I can't imagine like a side like India or Australia losing a couple series and firing their coach, right? It doesn't happen, and that's why you have to understand this is a project in progress.
It's a process. It's a process. Yeah. And one final thing, just to touch on that for Stuart Law, like, you saw ahead of that tour, because Nepal hadn't played an awful lot. I know they played a little tri-series or a quad series in Hong Kong that was, not even the full team, but this was their first kind of games of relevance in whatever it was, 8-9 months. It was really all the way back since that tour of Texas, wasn't it? So you looked at it and you said, all of the fans online are calling, they're saying Karen Casey's done. He should be retired. Sampal Kami's done it. Not all of them, but there was a big conjecture online. Why is he there? Why is Rohit Paudel captains? And all of a sudden, the guys who were the real heroes, Arif Sheikh was being criticised. Sheikh was probably the player of the tour. Karen Casey, the next best. Sampal Kami, the third best, until he got injured. So they had the best squad. The only thing I would personally have disagreed with in terms of selection for that tour, I was really surprised to see Kushal Malla left out of the T20 team. Could understand maybe him getting the axe in ODI cricket. He struggled a bit there. But
he's a perfect T20 player.
His power, his quality, and his bowling, which is skillful. He's a good fielder too. And I think, I hope that was the one big omission that I thought was a surprise. But, the continued emergence of Nandan Yadav is a real bonus. Rijan Dakal as well. They've got the right guys in and around. And also, for whenever Nepal lose a game, there seems to be a whole string of posts about we need to replace the captain. Rohit Paudel's an excellent captain. He's a great leader. He's a good young man, and he's got the absolute respect of that entire group. And I love what Stuart Law did. He didn't listen to any of the noise coming in. He went and looked at the camp. He stuck with the tried and tested, and he's evolved a few bits that will continue to evolve. And he'll continue to uncover players as well, but that will be a gradual thing.
Sure.
You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of good things going on in that Nepal team, despite where they were in that ODI table. There was a number of reasons for that. They were mainly focusing on T20 cricket. They had a very difficult tour up in King City where the conditions were horrendous, came out on the backside of a couple of close defeats, and they lost a game they probably should have won up in Texas. That was it.
Yeah, the fact that Nepal is scoring, forget about like winning by 2 runs or losing by 2 runs, right? The fact that they're able to score 320s, getting to that level, That's a sign right
They're
there.
miles on from where they were 5 years ago.
Exactly.
They've got the right group of players. People just need to get behind them and understand it's a very, very tough league. And, the 3 games against the West Indies, I think Nepal is going to win one of them. Stick that prediction on the record. Nepal will win its first ever game against a full member. In those conditions, late September, West Indies are inconsistent. They're going to win one of those games.
Yeah.
But they've no right to.
Sure.
They get a fraction of the funding the West Indies get. They get a fraction of the access to world-class facilities the West Indies players get. They get a fraction, a tiny percentage of the exposure in the franchise leagues that the West Indies players get. Nepal will beat the West Indies in one of those games.
Okay, let's hope so.
But if they don't, it doesn't mean we should sack Stuart.
Of course. You have to give time. I'm a firm believer in having patience, and
100%.
2 years is honestly, it's not a long time.
And I know Nepali people are emotional. Irish people are very emotional too. We really are. But you can't ride that wave of emotions to a point where you're you're giving out that Gulshan Jah didn't win that game against South Africa. He's a teenage kid who's an incredibly talented cricketer, and he didn't deserve any of that
He
vilification.
almost pulled it off. Like the couple. See what those 2 shots that the second shot, I thought he scored for. It was a 4.
I thought it was 4. It just checked slightly in the outfield, and it was a great piece of fielding.
What the 2 shots that he hit remind me of Klusner 99
Yeah,
World Cup. It almost pulled it
Definite
off.
bits of Klusner there, yeah.
Okay. We kind of talked about this a little bit, Andrew. How can the game be improved for Nepal, or what do you think needs to improve to get to the test nation, or to become a test nation?
Infrastructure is a big part of it, and it goes back to the point I made earlier in the day about it's not about building 50,000 seat stadiums. It's about getting cricketing infrastructure, so turf pitches in multiple places, access for youth structures to allow boys and girls to come into a pyramid system, broaden the base as far as you can at the bottom, expose kids in every school, as many schools as you can across the country, give them then some engagement with the sport in some kind of very basic competitive levels, and then work up to the elite structures. It's not rocket science. They're already doing a huge number of those things. They're getting more and more cricket across the country. It's so popular that I've no doubt they're going to continue to uncover good players. And also the fact that now it's a realistic career choice. When you get to 15, 16, your mum or your dad hopefully won't be saying to you, no, you need to focus on your studies and go and do a real job. They might say, yes, make sure you finish your education. But absolutely, if you feel like you've got a chance at chasing this, there's now 8 NPL franchise teams that are offering good employment opportunities with good money. If you get to play for the national team, that's going to be an incredible journey. Or the under-16s we just saw with a great result winning their ACC trophy, or the 19s that have been getting consistently to World Cups in recent years. They're doing everything right. I think just a little bit more broadening of the base and expansion of the development of the game at a more basic level. And it's difficult because so much of the focus has to be on the elite national sides, because their performances are your shop window as to what's judged. But you need to kind of balance those scales and also focus on the development of the game. I think, in fairness, they're doing that.
Okay. All right, last couple of questions. I know.
Yeah.
This has been great.
Been awesome. Yeah, I loved it.
Okay, so when I saw your name, like the most popular name that you have right now, you go by Takludai, right?
Takludai,
yeah. And then there's a shred of humility that comes with that, because it's but also you understand it's a term of endearment, basically.
Oh, absolutely.
How did that term come about? Who called you that first, and then it just kind of, do you remember?
That's a great question. I don't think I know. It's kind of evolved, isn't it? I love the nickname. Firstly, because it's got a great ring to it, the Takludai. Secondly, because it's kind of both complimentary and disparaging at the same time, which is what makes it. And it's just catchy, isn't it? I don't know who the individual. I suspect it was. I couldn't tell you the sole fan, but I reckon, without knowing the exact story, it would have been one of the times on the grass banks of the TU cricket ground, where again, whilst a lot of people from Nepal speak some English, very few are completely fluent. So a lot of the conversations I would be having would be through my 15 or 20 words of broken Nepali, alongside maybe some of those fans broken English. And, going up and walk. One thing I always love to do it here at Major League, I can never understand for the life of me as to why and how commentators just sit in the box for the day. you've got to get out and see the ground and see different angles and see different things. So I always do that. I did that when I coached. I always did laps of the pitch. When I played, I always did laps of the pitch. So I always get out. And obviously now in Nepal, frustratingly at points, the security won't let me actually go up into the crowd anymore, which I'll be honest is frustrating, or I'll be allowed into certain sections or whatever. But I still try to get out and have a walk always and meet people. But back then, you know, when I was first going, I would just go up under the grass banks. And I suspect somebody probably said to me, because respect is such a massive part of Nepalese culture, and Dai being elder brother and a real compliment. Somebody probably was calling me a Dai, and then somebody else probably said, Taklu Dai. And then I remember people laughing. And even now, even when they meet me, because people just love life so much in Nepal, they like giggle when they'll be like Taklu Dai, then giggle like children. Even if they could be in there, could be quite old. And I reckon someone has gone Taklu Dai and laughed, and I've probably asked what it's meant. And then the hilarity was 3 or 4 years ago on social media, there was a whole like argument on one of the fan forums. We've got to stop calling Andrew Taklu Dai. Lenny doesn't like it. And I had to like go out and give a statement and be like, hey guys, it's okay. I really like it. My friends back home call me it now.
Right.
So, and I love being bold. I am bold.
I think there's a lady commentator. I think she calls you the same. And then I think like, that's what I was telling you, that it's disparaging also at the same time. There's a respect. It's this, the clash of two different things coming together, right? And but again, that's where I feel like, you know, you got that humility in you, that you're going with that, and I want to thank you for that, by the way.
If we have egos in Ireland, you'll be cut back down to size, but we don't do it like the Prime Minister is the same as the school teacher or whatever, you know, it doesn't matter, whatever background, we don't, everyone's the same in Ireland. It's what we try to do, and it's the way we're brought up. If you have an ego in Ireland, I really hope I don't have an ego of any kind. You are told about it pretty quick, and you'll get a look. Who does that lad think he is now? He's getting a bit big for his boots. I'll cut him back down to size. So it's a lovely way. Look, it's a good way to be. And when you travel as much as I do, and I think we're so lucky being Irish, because Irish people have a good reputation around the world. And everywhere you go, particularly here in America, when they hear you're Irish, they'll usually say, oh my God, you're Irish? I'm Irish. I'm like, all right, yeah, good on you. And they'll tell you about their 1/10 Irish or something. So look, it's a blessing being Irish, really is.
Okay, well, focusing on Irish, like the last question.
For sure.
Neil from New Jersey kind of comes off from like this negative stereotype in some sense, probably like from the books of Family Guy. So he asks, do the Irish drink as much as they say?
It's a great stereotype because it means we love life and we love having what we say is the crack, CRAIC, as in you have crack means fun. So you have the crack with people. I have the occasional drink. I wouldn't drink that much, but I do. Like last night I had 3 beers, for example. The other guys had quite a bit more because I caught up with them a bit later. I was tired. But I love that. Like having the crack with Matthew Hayden and Danny Morrison, and Jeff Crowe's such a champion of a guy, Paul Wilson. I was having the crack. And that was, you couldn't replicate that. But there's a big culture now in Ireland. We drink a lot less. I think if you look at the actual statistics in terms of how much Irish people drink, we're miles off the highest, but we still have that reputation. Yeah. And I, for me now, just take that as whether you drink or you don't, and each their own choice for everything they do in life. I think it's just a little stereotype that has, it has its rooting in the fact that, okay, maybe historically we drank a lot, but every Irish person you meet, they like having fun, and there's never any aggression, I hope, and there's never any badness to them. So, particularly up in the northeast of the United States, where there's so many Irish and so many Irish bars. There's even an Irish bar in Kathmandu, for God's sake.
Oh, yeah. The Irish pubs are everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Just one just around the corner in Dallas. It's, for me, it's not a massive part of my life, but when I occasionally have one, oh, God, it's just... Right. And if I'm back home, a Guinness for me is... mother's milk.
And we need to probably like just next time do a better job at this and get like a couple of Guinnesses. I think we're good, because I love Guinness.
You'd have to come to Ireland then, because the only good Guinness is there. It just wouldn't be terrible if it was here.
So how does the American Guinness compare to the actual Guinness? Like what is it?
I can only tell you from purely looking at the ones that a couple of the other boys are drinking, a couple of the MLC guys are having one, I wouldn't even taste it. It's that bad. Back in Ireland, it's creamy and it's wholesome. Right. And it's full of iron. And
another reason to come to Ireland.
There's many, I promise you.
By the way, as a small thank you, I have this jersey. This actually gifted by a store, Promise Buy up in San Francisco. He has a store, and I told him initially the plan was to kind of do this in San Jose.
Yeah, it didn't quite happen.
Yeah, but no, he's like, I want to send this as a gift.
Thank you.
On behalf of all the Nepali people. So it's a jersey.
I don't have one yet.
Okay,
Believe it or
well,
not.
there you go. So I asked him for, like, I told him, like, Lenny's kind of tall and
And broad. I reckon that's going to be the perfect fit. Have a look at that.
Okay, all right.
And that's that looks like the official World Cup jersey.
Yes, it
which
is.
will host many good memories. Thank you, Dandavad. That's Dandavad. What's the gent's name?
Promise.
Dandavad. Thank you so much. That is awesome. I'll treasure that for sure.
Yeah, thank you. And then, so you've been a big advocate for the associate teams, and I think, countries like who are not as popular in the cricketing world, they definitely need a voice, or they needed a voice, and obviously you provided a platform. And not only Nepal, I see your posts, you support, the Omans and the Hong Kongs and the Netherlands and, everyone, and you want them to do well.
100%.
Right? So anything that you want to say to the associate team fans and also the Nepali fans?
Yeah, for me, I think that's such a good question in terms of the importance of associate cricket and what associate cricket is, and how they fight and scrap for every single piece of recognition that they deserve, and they do it with less funding, with less fixtures, with less opportunity. It's an uneven playing field, and I think all of that support and love for associate cricket for me comes from the fact I'm Irish, the fact, okay, technically we're a test nation now, but we're brought up supporting the underdog and getting behind the little guy. And what the Dutch and Scottish and UAE and Namibian and American and Nepali teams do in terms of fighting the good fight and trying to show how good they are deserves every ounce of our recognition and respect and coverage. And yeah, I think it's a big part of my life now is advocating for those associate sides, advocating that they deserve more opportunities from a playing perspective, individual players in franchise leagues, fixtures against full members, opportunities at World Cups, and huge credit to the ICC that the World Cups have all expanded now in the men's and women's format. Women's will go to 12 teams in the T20 next summer in England. I just think we've got to understand, and I think there's a growing understanding as to how good the quality of cricket is, but even more so how brilliant cricket is with context and jeopardy. And the reality is, if Nepal have a terrible 2.5-3 year cycle here, they could lose their ODI status, and that could set them back. And nobody wants to see that happen, but it means that the cricket never doesn't have consequence.
Sure.
And sport has to have jeopardy for it to have meaning. And too often, and why there is criticism of bilateral cricket, particularly at the the ODI or T20I level, is that it doesn't really matter because they're going to qualify for that World Cup anyway because they've already got in via prior performances, or the rankings are so tilted in the full members' favour because the associates never get to play them that they just qualify anyway. And cricket without meaning or context is okay, it's fine, it's still good. It's nothing like cricket with context. And that's where ICC Men's Cricket World Cup League 2 is so brilliant. The Challenge League beneath that is so good. And then from the T20 perspective, both the sub-regional and then the final qualifiers in each of the 5 regions are phenomenal, and they deserve more easy to access coverage, more mainstream coverage. ICC TV and the IMG and the Cricket Clubs team do the most brilliant job at getting those games from very difficult parts of the world with little to no infrastructure at times out to the wider public. But it deserves even more support on the ICC's channels. I'm constantly messaging, like every series I go to, I'll send them 2 or 3 moments a day saying, look, this is a brilliant catch, or this is a brilliant moment, or this happened, please post it. And sometimes they get it up. I know they've got other focuses because their focus is very much on the ICC major events. And when they do go up, they always get great engagement. So I see that very much as part of kind of my role, my journey is to advocate for more and more of that. And yeah, one final misconception might be people might think I only love Nepal. Nepal's got an incredibly special place in my heart. I adore the country and the people, but I love all of these associate nations. And very occasionally someone will go, oh, your commentary's biased towards Nepal. And I'm like, guys, when Nepal played Scotland, like Nepal lost that one ODI, I was still buzzed for how brilliant a game of cricket it is. All I want is a brilliant game, the sides to shine, the best players to have a platform to perform. And I want to help tell their stories and tell their journey and support them. That's it. There's no bias, there's no agenda with me. I want the game to grow, and I think it's trending in that right direction, and there's a growing recognition of that fact from around the world. And again, we've got to look at that perspective. 10 years ago, you couldn't even watch these games without physically being there. You might have been lucky to get a live scorecard. Every ball of all these games are now broadcast around the world. And I just really hope the 8 associates, it could be 9 if Zimbabwe miss out through the Africa qualifier, the 8 associates that go there to India and Sri Lanka in February, March, do the developing game proud. I think they will. And I really, really am hopeful if they can adjust and adapt to the conditions, we might see 5 or 6 or 7, like 2 or 3 would be a great effort, but 5 or 6 or 7 big upsets. Let's get another associate side to the Super 8s. And yeah, let's kind of shake this game and say, grow it, because it's what it deserves and it's what it needs.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. How can people find you on social media? Can you? I mean, I'm pretty sure they've already found you, but just for people who may
yeah,
not know.
absolutely. And I if it wasn't for commentating, I wouldn't put a single thing about my life online. I'm a pretty private guy, being honest, but I do actually really enjoy the commentary side of it on there and showing a bit of behind the scenes and my favorite moments on mics. And I probably should be doing more. At most, I'll do a post a day, but yeah, just at Cricket Badge on Twitter and Instagram, and then just type in Andrew Leonard everywhere else. I even apparently have a TikTok now. I don't really know what's going on there.
Do you dance on there?
No, I will never. I will. This is the one thing I will never do. I will never dance. And it's ironic, given I kind of ran digital for the ICC. I still don't really understand.
It's a minimum for TikTok, right? You have to dance.
Look, it's meant. But look, the scale of love and positivity and kindness I receive on there is overwhelming, and I do want to say thanks for that, because there is a toxic and a poisonous side to social media. I've never seen it myself. And I think that's mainly down to Nepal fans and general associate cricket fans who are grateful for the fact that, I think they realise it's not exactly the most glamorous occupation we're doing in many ways. And my mum even says it to me, because she'll read all the comments on a YouTube video or whatever, and she'll go, why is everyone being so nice? So that's going to turn. She's always worried. She's like, that's going to turn one day. I hope it never does. And yeah, just hugely grateful and very humbled by the love and support I receive.
Okay. Well, Andrew, you certainly have earned my respect, and thank you so much for being here. Again, we look forward to hearing more of your commentary, whether it's MLC, International Cricket, Associate Cricket, whatever it is. And again, I appreciate the time, and safe travels to you.
It's been a pleasure, Sanjeev. Really good to chat with you. Looking forward to seeing it.
Namaste.
Namaste.